Chapter 2349. Yes, there are more and more complaints. Lon Xin replied without hesitation. Moreover, even my Golden Spring Mountain disciples have some doubts. After all, there are thousands of disciples that have gone missing. What did they say? What rumors are there? Our Golden Spring Mountain disciples are naturally incomparable to those Tao sect cultivators. General's military discipline is strict and strict. They only have some doubts, but they don't dare to talk too much. Tu Hong's eyes flashed with gratification. He nodded. Fortunately, these disciples have not disappointed this old man's many years of training. But he also had some regret. He whispered, "Unfortunately, in the face of such a great enemy, this old man cannot do anything alone. I fear that I will have to disappoint them. General can rest assured." Lon Xin cupped her hands across her chest. Not to mention the ordinary Golden Spring Mountain disciples. Even this old man has long since decided to follow General. In my heart, I have already decided to live and die with Golden Spring Mountain and pursue General. Ha! Since we can die together, then we can live together. Tu Hong lifted his hand and smiled. In truth, the situation isn't that terrible. Dozens of illusory swordsmen. Lon Xion's eyes flashed with despair. Tu Hong had already seen this, but he didn't say anything. He only smiled and said, "Old brother Lon, you can rest assured, since I dare to say this, then the disciples of Golden Spring Mountain will definitely have a chance to survive." But Lon Xion was still skeptical. She knew that those thousands of Golden Spring Mountain disciples had been hidden by Tu Hong, but no matter how many disciples there were, it was impossible for them to be a match for dozens of late Golden Core cultivators. Thinking of this, Lon Xion's eyes flashed with understanding. Good. At this time, Tu Hong's eyes shrank. He grit his teeth and slowly stood up. He ordered, "Old brother Lon, the sword cultivators have already approached my Golden Spring Mountain's defensive array formation. Life or death will be decided here. Inform the disciples to immediately meet the enemy. As long as we can drag them into the Spirit Stone mine, their mission will be complete. They can't escape." Lon Xin was stunned. But after a moment, she hesitated. Then what about the Tao sect cultivators? Them? Tu Hong smiled and waved his hand. Life and death is up to fate. Riches and honor is up to the heavens. Yes, subordinate understands. Lon Xin cupped her hands together. Her eyes swept over the curtain of light, and then she hurried away. On the light screen, a deep black line had already touched the blood-red line. On the ground, Yuan Qing stared coldly at the black hole. The spiritual energy fluctuation in the black hole was getting stronger. Suddenly, Yuan Qing raised his eyebrows and a hint of a smile flashed through his eyes as he shouted, "Disciples, prepare to attack. The cowardly cultivators finally can't take it anymore." Ha ha ha. Upon hearing Yuan Qing's voice transmission, all the sword cultivator disciples perked up. Each of them activated the flying swords beneath their feet and waited for the battle to begin. The bird cultivators in the sky also flew down, covering the sky above Golden Fountain Mountain. They seemed to be preparing to attack the cultivators of Golden Fountain Mountain, and also seemed to be preventing the disciples of Golden Fountain Mountain from escaping. Indeed, the moment Yuan Qing's voice landed, the entire area started to flicker. The cultivators of Jin Quan Mountain all rushed out from the light like a swarm of bees. The magic tools and treasures in their hands were the same as before, attacking towards the sword cultivator. However, the cultivators this time were clearly different from before. Not only were there several times more people, but the cultivators' ranks were also much higher. The cultivators are still struggling on the verge of death. Yuan Qing laughed heartily, but he did not go up. His target was Tu Hong. Moreover, the swordsmen had indeed made great progress in the past few days of fighting. Regardless of whether it was their teamwork or killing, Yuan Qing and the other swordsmen were extremely satisfied. He Fan Yuan was feeling a little tired. He only had 3 Tai Ching sect disciples left. When his Tai Ching sect disciples left patrol Heaven City, there were 11 of them. When they were attacked by the beast cultivators, 4 of them died, leaving only 7. When they encountered the bird cultivators, another disciple escaped and was killed by the bird cultivators. Thus, only 6 disciples came to Golden Fountain Mountain. In the previous few days of fighting, although he was extremely careful, 2 Foundation Establishment initial stage disciples were still killed by the sword cultivators. Where did Xiaohua go? At this moment, He Fan Yuan could not help but think of Xiaohua, who forced the bird cultivators to retreat. If this fierce person was here, I would not have died. However, He Fan Yuan had already released his divine sense. Like the previous few times, there was not a single Imperial Thunder Sect disciple on the battlefield. Maybe that they've already escaped from the battlefield, or there are other arrangements. He Fan Yuan only had this trace of doubt, but he did not think about anything else. The green ring in his hand flew out and blocked a dust-like flying sword that was flying towards him. However, it was only able to block it for a brief moment. The flying sword that was like smoke and dust wrapped around the ring in an instant. Then it split into several more flying swords that pierced diagonally and rushed out again. Quick! He Fan Yuan did not seem to panic. He made a hand seal, and the green ring produced a strong suction force. The dust-like flying sword was immediately sucked into the ring and turned into a 1-foot-long flying sword. The other flying swords were also sucked back. However, the flying sword had just returned to its original form when a layer of dark blue sword light flashed on it. A tearing force that was comparable to the suction force of the ring was produced. With a buzzing sound, the flying sword spun and flew out like a sharp awl. It was like an arrow that had been pulled taut from a bow, pulling the ring down several feet. Hiss! He Fan Yuan sucked in a breath of cold air. The magic power in his body poured into the ring like a torrential flood. The ring also shone brightly, trying to restrain the flying sword. However, not far from He Fan Yuan, there was a petite female swordsman with a face full of disdain. She was wearing a sword outfit, and her hands were forming a sword seal. Her small mouth slightly opened as she shouted, "Break!" As the female cultivator's sword essence circulated, a huge force was emitted from the flying sword. With a piercing sound, the flying sword flew out of the ring and pierced towards He Fan Yuan's forehead like an arrow leaving the bow. He Fan Yuan was shocked, but he was not too flustered. He was controlling the ring, and when the ring was unable to continue, he was already alert. Seeing the flying sword's sharpness, he did not have absolute confidence in blocking it. He could only use his magic power to fly and dodge to the side. He Fan Yuan had just dodged when a miserable scream came from behind him. He Fan Yuan's divine sense scanned and saw a fist-sized hole in the chest of a Jin Quan Mountain disciple. Blood was flowing out of the hole as his body fell from the sky. His eyes were still open as he stared hatefully at He Fan Yuan. "Sigh, brother, don't blame me." He Fan Yuan sighed inwardly. However, right at this moment, an unparalleled sense of vigilance emerged from his back. Almost without thinking, his body could not fly downwards, and instead, his body abruptly fell downwards. Chapter 2350. With a swoosh, a palm-sized flying sword brushed past his head, shattering his defensive yellow talisman and even slicing off a long strand of his black hair, causing beads of blood to appear on his pale white scalp. He Fan Yuan didn't dare to think any further. He clapped his hands and took out several defensive yellow talismans, hurriedly placing them on his body. At the same time, he was still worried and used a few spells. Only when his body emitted a faint light again did he finally relax. However, he had just stopped when that fierce female cultivator's flying sword flew close again. The flying sword that was like mist and smoke covered him like a fine net. He Fan Yuan couldn't recall the cyan ring in time. He used both his hands to continuously use spells and slapped a storage bag, throwing out a dozen yellow talismans. With a rumbling sound, the fire net talisman transformed into a fire net that blocked in front of the flying sword. A series of ice balls also appeared in the air, but these yellow talismans, which usually looked powerful, were slightly penetrated by the smoke net. A crack appeared in the middle of all the talismans. They simply didn't wait for the magic power to explode before they were annihilated. Naturally, He Fang Yuan took advantage of this gap and held the ring in his hand. Just as he was about to activate his Fa Li, suddenly, a 1-meter-long fire crane appeared in the air with a caw sound. With a whistling sound, it pounced on the female swordsman who was proudly activating her flying sword in the air. The female swordsman was shocked. Sword light flashed around her body as she tried to dodge the flamingo while resisting the intense flames. The flamingo was too fast and too sudden. The female swordsman had just seen the flamingo when it pounced on her body. Moreover, it instantly passed through the female swordsman's sword-light defense and set her body on fire. The female swordsman tried her best to use sword essence, wanting to extinguish the flames. However, the sword essence was like adding fuel to the fire, causing the flames to burn even more fiercely. He Fang Yuan was overjoyed at the sight of this, and without any hesitation, he took out the green ring. That ring spun in the air and directly hit the female sword cultivator's head, breaking it effortlessly. As the female swordsman's corpse fell from the air, He Fang Yuan shouted, "Xiao Hua, junior brother Xiao?" However, where would Xiao Hua's reply come from? What was even stranger was that the flaming crane did not appear again, as if no one had sent it out. Run! He Fang Yuan scanned with his divine sense. The number of swordsmen had already exceeded the number of cultivators. He did not dare to hesitate any longer. Furthermore, he had already received private messages from the cultivators. This was the last battle. Jin Quan Mountain's disciples were already prepared to retreat. Although the Dao sect's cultivators did not receive any orders, they had already decided, as long as they fought, they would escape. Alas! He Fang Yuan sighed inwardly. The Tai Ching sect disciple closest to him was currently engaged in a battle with a shining swordsman, and the situation was quite dangerous. He wanted to save them, but He Fang Yuan only hesitated for a moment before flying toward the gap behind the sword cultivator. Before he could even fly half a meter above the battlefield, the bird cultivators with sharp eyes in the sky had already seen him. Two tall and thin bird cultivators looked at each other before flapping their wings and swooping down. Their target was He Fang Yuan. However, at this moment, about 10 feet below He Fang Yuan, a swordsman of about grade 5 had just killed a Foundation establishment cultivator in front of him. He raised his head and saw He Fang Yuan's figure. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he formed a sword seal in his hand. A sword light as thin as a strand of hair flew towards He Fang Yuan silently, reflecting the various colors of the battlefield. He Fang Yuan saw that there were actually 2 bird cultivators attacking him together in the sky. He was greatly shocked and quickly used his flying technique to escape in another direction. After flying for about 20 feet, he felt a strange movement. Before he could use his divine sense to check carefully, there was a flash of light in his chest. A flying sword as thin as a strand of hair had broken through his defensive light and pierced straight into his body. He Fang Yuan could only barely move his body to the side. That flying sword had already pierced through his chest. With a miserable cry, he fell down from the sky. The 2 bird cultivators saw this and spread their wings, flying into the sky to be on guard again. That sword cultivator who killed them swept his gaze with a cold gaze, ignoring them and stabbing at others with his sword. Sword light flashed, reaping the lives of cultivators one after another. With a series of explosions, the lives of sword cultivators were wiped out one after another. He Fang Yuan was only an insignificant one among them. Seeing that the battle was already decided, Yuan Qing retracted his gaze and looked down at the black hole below him. He then raised his head and looked at Ling Yun Wu and the rest who were scattered all over the battlefield, transmitting his divine sense. "Friend Ling Jian, the cultivators that you're looking for, I'm afraid that they're the same as the golden core stage cultivators in Jin Quan Mountain, hiding under this defensive array. If you want to force them out, it would be better if..." Friend Ling and the other sword friends of the Ling Feng sword sect worked together to break this defensive array. Ling Yunwu's divine sense swept over and thought for a while before smiling. Fine. I have been watching this farce for so many days. If I don't make a move, it would show that Ling Feng Sword's sect doesn't know the rules. Saying so, Ling Yunwu waved his hand, and the flying swords under the feet of the dozen illusory sword cultivators flew out. The swordsmen raised their hands and held the flying swords in their hands. Wung, wung. With a series of sword cries, the swordsmen's bodies turned illusory and gradually transformed into flying swords of different shapes. Immediately after, dozens of flying swords rushed into the air, and a powerful sword intent swept through the entire battlefield. Not only did the flying swords of the swordsmen tremble slightly, but they also bowed down. Even the cultivator's true essence was suppressed, and all kinds of magic tools and treasures fell from the sky. However, this only lasted for a short moment before the powerful sword intent retracted into the huge swords. The huge swords formed by the dozen illusory sword cultivators actually danced in the air slowly. Although it wasn't as strong as the old man who transformed into a sword back at Chicken Crow Mountain, the sharp edge of the sword was enough to tear apart a nascent soul cultivator. Woo, the huge sword slowly pierced into the black hole. The surrounding spiritual chi of heaven and earth was pierced through. Small hurricanes formed around the huge sword, blowing the swordsmen and cultivators who were fighting each other off their feet. Rumble, the earth quaked, and the entire ground trembled. Cracks of a few feet wide and thousands of feet deep appeared on the ground of Golden Spring Mountain, splitting the entire ground apart. Great! Yuan Qing's divine sense swept over, and he clapped his hands and laughed. The defensive formation of Quanjin Mountain has been destroyed. Many thanks to the sword cultivators of Ling Feng Sword Sect. You're welcome. Ling Yunwu and the rest revealed themselves and immediately used their divine senses to scan the area under the restriction. Naturally, Ling Yunwu's divine sense was also blocked by the special layer of soil of Quanjin Mountain and was unable to penetrate. At this time, thousands of cultivators rushed out from the black hole that had just been destroyed. The one leading them was naturally Tu Hong. Tu Hong did not hold a spear in his hand, but a triangular-shaped magic tool. Old fool Yuan Qing, do you dare to fight with this old man again? Tu Hong shouted arrogantly as soon as he appeared. Haha, this Yuan has been waiting for you for a long time. Yuan Qing laughed as he heard this. The flying sword under his feet flew up and immediately turned into a round sun that pierced towards Tu Hong. Tu Hong was already prepared. He pointed his finger at the triangular-shaped magic tool, and a bright light flew out from the magic tool and rushed towards the blazing sun. Kill! Lan Xin and the rest were naturally on side. Without waiting for Tu Hong's orders, they all stimulated their magic power and rushed towards Ing Chao and the other high-level swordsmen. How could Ing Chao put these late Foundation establishment cultivators in his eyes? With a loud scream, the bird cultivators in the air swooped down and began to fight with the cultivators. Tu Hong's light was very fierce. As soon as it touched Yuan Qing's flying sword, it extinguished the flames on the flying sword, leaving behind only a foot-long flying sword body. Oh! Yuan Qing was also a little shocked, but there was more to come. After the clear light destroyed the flames, it did not stop. It continued to corrode the body of the flying sword. In the blink of an eye, small brown dots were born from the sound of the flying sword. You dare! Yuan Qing's heart ached. He knew that his flying sword had been damaged, and he would have to spend a great deal of effort to repair it. Although it wasn't as humiliating as last time, the price he had to pay was far more disastrous. Yuan Qing was furious. He had suffered defeat again and again in front of Tu Hong, and now in front of the other sword cultivators of Heavenly Sword Region. At this time, he wanted to kill Tu Hong with a single sword strike. But what was strange was that Tu Hong's eyes swept over, and he pointed at the triangular-shaped magic tool. The magic tool began to emit an overwhelming light. This light not only covered Yuan Qing, but also Ing Chao, Li Min, Ling Yunwu, and the others. Ignorant cultivator! Ing Chao was furious. His body suddenly swayed, and two wings appeared on his back. His whole body shot up into the sky and flashed past the light. Ling Yunwu and the others didn't dare to be negligent. They stepped on their flying swords and rushed up into the sky. Without knowing the details, they didn't dare to be as reckless as Yuan Qing. Don't go. When Yuan Qing saw Tu Hong's arrogant behavior, he had already guessed what he was thinking. When he saw Tu Hong release the light and fly in another direction, he immediately shouted. Ying Chao, Ling Yunwu, and the others were naturally alert. They flew up and surrounded Tu Hong. Tu Hong's body flew rapidly, but he still couldn't escape from the encirclement. When he saw the others taking out their flying swords, he quickly pointed at the magic tool again. But this time, the light from the magic tool only flew out a thin layer and stopped. Tu Hong frowned. It seemed that the magic tool wasn't suitable for him. Forget it. Tu Hong's expression changed slightly. He shouted, "Disciples of the Tao sect, we will retreat back to the Spirit Stone Mine. There's still a few defensive arrays inside. We will resist stubbornly and kill the swordsmen in the mine." Yes. Hearing this, the disciples of Golden Spring Mountain shouted in unison. Then Tu Hong pointed to the triangular-shaped magic tool again. A tricolored light rushed to the ground, and another burst of light appeared. Chapter 2351. Tu Hong and the rest of the Golden Spring Mountain disciples, as well as the Tao sect cultivators, rushed towards the flickering light. Everyone's figure disappeared into it. When the disciples disappeared, the light also disappeared. This time, it was different from the previous few times. The faint spiritual energy ripples also disappeared. Yuan Qing and the rest scanned the area with their spiritual senses. Once again, they realized that the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone vein seemed to have been stripped of its clothes. Everything could be seen through by their spiritual senses. Even the jade essences and spirit stones that were hidden deep underground could be seen at a glance. Haha, great. So it wasn't because our spiritual senses were restricted by the layer of earth. It was because of the Golden Spring Mountain's array. Yuan Qing laughed heartily. He looked at the ordinary layer of earth and laughed. Let's all go down. Leave a small group of swordsmen to guard the outside. I'm afraid that was the last time the cultivator used the array. Brother Yuan. Ying Chao shook his head. Didn't you see how cunning the cultivators of Golden Spring Mountain were? We should leave more swordsmen. But before he could finish his sentence, Ling Yunwu's face changed. He waved his hand, and the Ling Feng sword sect's illusory swords scanned the area with their spiritual senses. Then, they stepped on their swords and rushed into the black hole. The other four illusory swordsmen rushed into the layer of earth. Yuan Qing smiled bitterly and said to Ying Chao, "I also have the same thoughts. But the spirit stone vein has already been revealed. How many people can hold themselves back?" "Sigh, all right." Ying Chao looked above his head and saw the greedy beast cultivators. He could only nod his head. The reason why the swordsmen attacked the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone vein was for the spirit stones. It was unwise to restrain them now. Furthermore, it was the alliance of several sections. This made things even more difficult. "Let's go." Yuan Qing waved his hand. The sword cultivators who were already prepared flew out and rushed into the black hole. Since Yuan Qing and Ying Chao did not say anything, the swordsmen from the other sects also flew in. At this moment, the fact that the disciples from the other sects did not rush in was already very praiseworthy. After waiting for most of the swordsmen to enter the Spirit Stone vein, Yuan Qing and Ying Chao instructed the 100 or so swordsmen and beast cultivators who were still in the air, and the two of them also flew into the vein. Io, the spiritual stone vein of the Golden Fountain Mountain, really lives up to its name. Yuan Qing flew down and spread out his spiritual sense as he commented with a smile. That's not all. Look. Ying Chao pointed in the direction of the jade marrow. That's the top-grade jade marrow. It's very useful for bird cultivators like us. I didn't expect there to be so many here. The sword friends of the Ling Feng sword sect are rushing towards the jade essence. Yuan Qing naturally saw Ling Yunwu and the others rushing towards the jade essence. Hee, fellow swordsman Yuan, you have to look carefully. There really is a disciple of the thunder-controlling sect to the left of the jade essence, Ying Chao said with a smile. Moreover, he's an early Foundation establishment disciple. Ah, it's true. Yuan Qing scanned the area with his spiritual force and saw it clearly. Wow, there really is such a cultivator. I thought, Io, that's not right. This guy isn't some Foundation establishment cultivator. What? Ying Chao was also slightly stunned. He also spread out his spiritual sense and looked at Xiao Hua again. Xiao Hua's spiritual sense swept through the entire Golden Fountain Mountain's spiritual stone vein and discovered that the entire defensive array of the spiritual stone vein had disappeared. Thousands of swordsmen swarmed in. What made him even more surprised was that the dozens of illusory swordsmen actually used their spiritual sense to scan his and Shui Hongshan's whereabouts. They immediately locked onto them and flew towards them along the tunnel. Xiao Hua was shocked. These were dozens of swordsmen comparable to late Golden Core Realm swordsmen. They really wanted his life. However, Xiao Hua didn't think that these high-level swordsmen were coming for him. However, under the siege of thousands of swordsmen, Xiao Hua didn't have the confidence to bring Shui Hongshan and the others away safely. Therefore, he thought of using the spiritual storage bag. Since spirit beasts could stay inside, what problem could cultivators have? In any case, he had already tested it with a thunder fire. Therefore, Xiao Hua put away the spiritual storage bag and immediately flew towards the distance. Moreover, he didn't dare to use any earth escape technique for fear of attracting the swordsman's attention. However, Xiao Hua's calculations were wrong. He thought that because he was too close to the jade essence, he was locked onto by the illusory swordsman. After flying for the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he once again released his spiritual sense. Only then did he discover that Ling Yunwu and the others were still chasing after him. Furthermore, the 4 swordsmen who came from underground were closing in on him. Damn it, I'm not Tu Hong. Why are you looking for me? Xiao Hua was anxious. Without hesitation, he used the hibernating thunder escape technique and increased his speed again. He flew towards the direction he came from, wanting to get away from these jade essences. Io, something's wrong. Xiao Hua's spiritual sense swept through an abandoned spiritual stone vein and was slightly stunned. This spiritual stone vein was clearly empty. Moreover, his spiritual sense was also empty, but it seemed like, therefore, without hesitation, Xiao Hua swept out his spiritual sense. Sure enough, in his spiritual sense, there were actually some fluctuations of spiritual energy in this abandoned spiritual stone vein. It was no different from a pile of spiritual stones. What is Senior 2 doing? Xiao Hua was a little confused. Immediately after, he spread his spiritual sense all over the surroundings. Indeed, there were strong fluctuations of spiritual energy in the vicinity. Is Senior 2 try to lure the sword cultivators in, so that the disciples of Jinshan Quan and my Dao sect can escape? Xiao Hua suddenly came to a realization. He could not help but sigh inwardly. Senior 2 is indeed generous. To actually set up such an array, to actually... Thinking till here, Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked. Io, something's wrong? This Jinshan Quan spiritual stone vein is filled with abandoned spiritual stones. There are no extra spiritual stones to be mined. But why was it that when we came that day, there were actually some Jinshan Quan disciples carrying bulging storage pouches on their waists? Where are they hiding? Are they trying to deceive us Dao sect cultivators? Furthermore, why did Tu Hong place us Imperial Thunder sect disciples beside these jade essences? These jade essences. Why did Jinshan Quan not mind them? Is it really because they are too hard? Xiao Hua pondered as he flew. His spiritual sense swept out once again, but this time he actually did not find any traces of Tu Hong. Furthermore, within the Jinshan Quan spiritual stone vein, among the cultivators who were being chased by the sword cultivators, 60% of them were Dao sect cultivators. There were only 4 Jinshan Quan disciples. It was far from the previous ratio. Something's fishy. Xiao Hua muttered in his heart, but his flying speed was definitely not slow. However, no matter which direction he flew towards, dozens of illusory sword cultivators were chasing after him. It was as though they did not care about the jade essences. So much so that they did not even check on the spiritual energy fluctuations that were clearly nearby. At this point, how could Xiao Hua not know what was going on? Chapter 2352. Damn it, they really did come for this young master. Xiao Hua was a little surprised. Who did this young master provoke? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua no longer flew along the tunnel of the cave. Instead, he formed a seal and escaped underground. Sure enough, seeing Xiao Hua escape underground, the swordsmen of the Ling Feng sword sect understood that this early-stage Foundation establishment disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect had some secrets. Therefore, the 4 swordsmen with flying swords that could escape underground did their best to stimulate their sword energy and chased after Xiao Hua from all directions. This was almost the same as when Xiao Hua was chased by the Fu family in Jinhua Mountain. The only difference was that in addition to the 4 swordsmen of the Ling Feng sword sect who could escape underground, there were 10 other swordsmen with illusory sword cultivation in the passage of the Spirit Stone vein. Moreover, these 10 swordsmen seemed to be using their flying swords to rush into the earth. Damn it, what should I do now? After a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong. His speed of earth escape was not as fast as thunder escape, and the speed of a sword cultivator's flying sword was not much affected in the earth layer. The 4 illusory swordsmen were chasing him very fast. It was impossible for Xiao Hua to escape their pursuit just by relying on earth escape. I'm afraid I can only kill a few illusory swordsmen first. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and used his Buddhist awareness to scan the 4 swordsmen flying towards him. Not far away, there were more than a dozen swordsmen who had also drilled their swords into the ground and were approaching Xiao Hua. After thinking for a bit, Xiao Hua immediately stopped and turned around to face the 4 illusory swordsmen. Just as Xiao Hua turned around, Xiao Hua opened his mouth slightly and the Dream Executioner flying sword flew out. Unfortunately, the flying sword was extremely nimble in the air, but in the earth layer, it was as if it had fallen into a sticky liquid. It was extremely difficult to fly, just like when Xiao Hua changed from thunder escape to earth escape. Oh, so troublesome. Xiao Hua suddenly came to a realization and said, now that we are inside the earth layer, this young master's various magic treasures are all restricted. If the Dream Executioner flying sword is like this, then the Soaring Dragon Scissors is also like this. In this way, I can only use. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and the Dream Executioner flying sword fell into it. The 4 swordsmen were originally trying their best to catch up, but when they saw Xiao Hua suddenly stop, they sucked in a mouthful of cold air. They understood very well how difficult it was to suddenly stop while flying at high speed. When they saw Xiao Hua unexpectedly rushing towards them, their hearts were pleasantly surprised, but they were even more doubtful, and even somewhat surprised. They are 4 second-grade and third-grade illusory swordsmen, comparable to late-stage Jindan stage cultivators. How could Xiao Hua, an early-stage Foundation establishment stage cultivator, dare to fight recklessly? But when they thought of Xiao Hua's terrifying Phoenix nickname, the 4 of them were still exceptionally cautious. The 4 of them turned their heads slightly and scanned each other with their divine senses. They immediately understood each other's intentions. Quick, the flying swords under their feet immediately appeared in their hands. The sword origin in their bodies was activated, and their bodies gradually became one with the flying swords. Their bodies also began to transform into flying swords. And with the appearance of the 4 flying swords, for powerful sword intents fiercely rushed towards Xiao Hua from 4 different directions, instantly forming a relatively balanced sword array. The sword intents turned into a powerful force that firmly pressed down on Xiao Hua like 4 giant hands, squeezing him from all directions. This, Xiao Hua, like the four swordsmen, also sucked in a mouthful of cold air. He inwardly pondered, the four illusory swordsmen are only Jindan stage cultivators. But when the four of them join forces, they actually have the strength of a nascent soul stage cultivator. When I was in Inkcloud Black Forest, wasn't the nascent soul stage cultivator's primordial spirit hand like this? If I was surrounded by more than 10 illusory swordsmen, how would I still be alive? Xiao Hua trembled in fear, and his desire to kill the swordsman became even stronger. Once he activated his magic power, his body flew toward the swordsman at an even faster speed. Xiao Hua and the swordsman were originally moving very quickly, but when Xiao Hua suddenly changed direction, the distance between the two of them shortened even faster. In just a few breaths of time, the four swordsmen's figures had just transformed into flying swords, and the distance between the two of them was only a few tens of feet. Moreover, these four transformed flying swords were connected to each other, as if they were an even larger flying sword. Sword light overflowed from the flying swords, and the sword light swayed as it approached. It was so sharp that it could almost tear through the void. At this moment, Xiao Hua suddenly waved his hand again and used the earth shield technique that he hadn't used for a long time. A yellow light flashed, and a yellow shield several feet long condensed in front of the flying swords. The power of this earth shield was just as Xiao Hua had expected, several times stronger than the one on the ground. However, this earth shield technique that Xiao Hua used was enough to resist the attack of a late Jindan stage cultivator. As soon as it came into contact with the sword light of the flying swords, it immediately produced a rumbling sound, and a dent was imprinted on the earth shield. Then, this dent rapidly expanded, and in the blink of an eye, countless deep cracks appeared on the earth shield. Then the entire earth shield collapsed, shattering like glass. Good heavens, Xiao Hua was greatly shocked. As expected of a sword cultivator, the power of your attack is unparalleled. Our Dao Sect cultivators are unable to reach this level. Seeing the large swords approaching, Xiao Hua hastily waved his hand, and the soul-absorbing bell appeared in his hand. Then he also held the toad soul tool in his hand, and the soul strand from his Dharma imprint shot into the toad soul tool. With a loud clang, the soul-absorbing bell rang like a big yellow bell. A soul artifact. Upon hearing the ringing of the soul-sucking bell, not only the four sword cultivators, but also the dozens of sword cultivators who were attacking from the side were shocked. They had fought with millions of soul cultivators from Meng Mountains for countless years. So how could they not know the power and function of a soul artifact? How could they not be shocked when this soul tool was suddenly used by a Dao Sect cultivator? What made them panic the most was that although this soul tool's function was not great, its power was rare. The bodies of the dozens of swordsmen who were slightly further away swayed slightly, and their souls were beating rapidly in their minds. The four illusory swords were even worse. The swords that they had transformed into swayed rapidly, emitting sword cries. The four flying swords that had transformed into swords could no longer take shape. They separated, and four extremely shocked human figures appeared in a flash. Of course, these illusory swordsmen were also panicking. They hurriedly urged the secret method to deal with soul tools, stabilizing their souls and bodies, and then gritted their teeth to transform into swords. In just a few breaths of time, Xiao Hua temporarily broke away from the tearing force of the four long swords. His speed of escape increased by half a point, but he saw that the soul-absorbing bell and the toad's soul tools were stored in the space, and the wishful rod was taken out again. "Fight!" Xiao Hua shouted majestically, and the wishful staff turned into a thick staff and smashed toward an illusory swordsman who had not completely transformed into a long sword. That illusory swordsman was Ling Yunwu's wife, Yuan. Courting death. Yuan's voice also revealed a kind of sword cry. Although her figure had not yet transformed into an illusory sword, the long sword like an arm with a heavy sword intent stabbed at Xiao Hua like a boulder. Although it had not yet reached his body, The sharpness that had already penetrated Xiao Hua's skin had already penetrated through the wind. Humph! Xiao Hua sneered, and the wishful staff in his hand smashed horizontally at the long sword. Sure enough, as he expected, this wishful staff was different from the slaying dream. There's almost no sluggishness in this layer of soil, and it was basically no different from playing in the air. Seeing the wishful staff hit the long sword like a meteor catching up at the moon, the long sword suddenly disappeared and suddenly appeared about a foot behind the wishful staff, stabbing towards Xiao Hua's eyebrows. Just SOSO. Yuan saw the long sword approaching Xiao Hua's eyebrows and sneered. In close combat, how could a sword cultivator be afraid of a cultivator? Even if Xiao Hua could kill a bright swordsman in close combat, in her eyes, he was still far inferior. However, a strange thing happened. The wishful staff suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes and attacked the long sword again. It was one of the moves of the heavenly staff technique, and Yuan instantly noticed and frowned slightly. However, at this time, it was too late for her to urge the long sword to dodge. However, she did not care too much. The sword in her hand was urged, and the sword light flashed, wanting to compete with the wishful staff. Dang! With a crisp sound, the wishful steel staff hit the ridge of the long sword. An unparalleled force hit Yuan's heart. Yuan felt that her heart was broken, and a sense of powerlessness that she had never felt before welled up in her heart. Immediately, Yuan spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Yuan's heart was really broken, and it was shattered into pieces by the wishful staff. The flying sword is second-grade illusory swordsman, under Xiao Hua's wishful staff, did not have the power to fight back and was shattered in one blow. Ling Yunwu shouted. He suddenly activated his sword origin and risked his life to fly towards Yuan. Xiao Hua glanced coldly at Yuan, and the wishful staff in his hand danced again, rushing towards the other three illusory swordsmen. Stab! The three illusory swordsmen saw Xiao Hua easily break Yuan's flying sword, and their hearts trembled. The swords that had just turned into the shape of a sword quickly rotated, and the three flying swords gathered into a large sword shape to stab Xiao Hua. These three flying swords formed a small sword array, and the force from top to bottom was like a big hand pressing straight toward Xiao Hua. The power in the sword array was comparable to Xiao Hua's heaven and earth sleeves, and it suppressed Xiao Hua. Moreover, the sword intent that could pierce through the boulder also penetrated Xiao Hua's body. It pierced the true essence in Xiao Hua's body. Fight! Xiao Hua did not hesitate, nor did he urge his true essence. The wishful staff in his hand swung again, and smashed towards the large sword shape. Dang, there was another loud sound, and the three illusory swordsmen flew back. They could no longer maintain the shape of a sword, and reverted back to their human forms. Moreover, each of them had blood flowing out of the corners of their mouths, and the sword in their hands had very deep cracks that were visible to the naked eye. Though Xiao Hua seemed to ignore the life and death of the four people, and hurriedly urged his true essence that was almost solidified, and rushed to the ground. However, just as Xiao Hua seriously injured the four illusory swordsmen, the dozens of illusory swordsmen also flew to the top of Xiao Hua's head and faintly surrounded him. Chapter 23:53. Fortunately, this encirclement has not yet formed, and there are still flaws in the farthest place. Moreover, Xiao Hua flew a few more feet, and it just happened to be 100 feet wide space, which should be an abandoned spirit stone mine. Xiao Hua did not hesitate and immediately urged Imperial Thunder travel. Thunder roared all over his body, and he flew toward the flaw. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Hua had arrived at the weak point. Just as he was about to break through the air with joy, a mournful sword cry came from behind him and pierced towards his back. Oh! Xiao Hua was slightly stunned. The wishful steel staff struck out, but to his surprise, the flying sword seemed to be psychic. With a sudden turn, it disappeared in midair. When the sword reappeared, it had already surpassed Xiao Hua and filled in the gap where he wanted to escape. This, Xiao Hua stopped and swept his divine sense around. The 12 illusory swordsmen were divided into 7 places and surrounded him in the middle. The closest to him was the flying sword that just passed him. Swordsman. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and stared at the swordsman who did not transform into a human form. Imperial Thunder Sect Foundation Establishment Disciple. A sword sound came from the flying sword. Your Foundation Establishment Disciple is really promising. You are all illusory swordsmen, but you actually formed a sword array to deal with me. Don't you feel ashamed? Xiao Hua waved the wishful staff in his hand a few times and said coldly, "This sword has never seen a cultivator who can break the flying sword of an illusory swordsman. You are the first." The flying sword said coldly, "You hurt this sword's lover. This sword will not let you escape from this 7-star sword array. However, if you take out the sword pouch and the black silk wood, this sword can release your soul and let you have a chance to enter the reincarnation cycle. Otherwise, you should know that we sword cultivators have ways to make your soul disappear, and there will not be a trace of God left in this world." 7-star sword array, sword pouch, black silk wood? Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the swordsmen who were all transformed into swords and pointed at him. He muttered in his heart, and then said, "I don't understand what you're talking about. What sword pouch? What black silk wood? Aren't you looking for the wrong person?" Humph! The flying sword snorted, and a small sword flew out from the flying sword, and a sword light shot into the small sword, and the previous image appeared on the small sword. Xiao Hua looked at the image of his figure and slightly understood. He nodded and said, "I understand. Those dozens of villains who raped and killed my Dao sex cultivators were your disciples? Good. Take out the black silk wood and the sword. This sword will release your soul. Ha ha ha. I will give it to you." Xiao Hua laughed loudly and waved his hand. A golden light flashed, and the soaring dragon shears immediately flew out and slashed at the flying sword. If you insist on being stubborn, then die." Seeing the Tongjiao scissors slashing towards him like lightning, Ling Yunwu's incarnation sneered. The 12 flying swords in the 7 celestial sword formation flashed at the same time as if they were breathing at the same time. Clank! The Tongjiao scissors slashed through Ling Yunwu's flying sword and was knocked back, only leaving a slight scratch on the flying sword. Hiss! Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He already understood that this 7 stars sword formation gathered the sword energy of the 12 illusory swordsmen together. No matter which swordsman he fought against, he would be directly facing the 12 illusory swordsmen. 12 illusory swordsmen. Xiao Hua's mouth was somewhat bitter. This one country's swordsman really overestimated himself. Fight! When Xiao Hua saw that the Tongjiao shears were ineffective, he immediately put it into the space. He raised the wishful staff in his hand again and mercilessly attacked Ling Yunwu. The power of Xiao Hua's wishful steel staff, Ling Yunwu already knew in his heart. He did not dare to be careless. He did not even dare to really touch the wishful steel staff. 12 sword lights flashed, 12 turned into 24, 24 turned into 48. Finally, the sky was filled with sword lights that surrounded Xiao Hua. "Grandma, isn't this young master's sword acting the world?" Xiao Hua was surprised. However, at this time, he did not dare to take out the slaying dream to show off. The wishful steel staff in his hand did not care to kill Ling Yunwu. He could only use the heavenly staff technique to protect himself. He did not dare to use his body to try the sword lights of the illusory swordsman. Pa pa pa, with a series of sounds, the sword light fell like rain and hit Xiao Hua from all directions. However, the Tong Tian staff technique was indeed powerful. The wishful staff danced like a ball of golden light, protecting Xiao Hua so that not even a drop of water could leak out. All the sword light was shot down by Xiao Hua. This, Ling Yunwu, who had already turned into a flying sword, was anxious. When he saw that his beloved was injured by Xiao Hua, his heart was furious. Regardless of the consequences, he used the secret technique of the Ling Feng sword sect and forcibly merged himself with the flying sword. This was how he was able to stop Xiao Hua, who almost escaped from the encirclement. However, this was, after all, a secret technique. He had not reached the level of illusory sword transformation. If it was too long, he could only transform into a flying sword and merge with the sword spirit in the flying sword. He could no longer restore his body. What he did not expect was that Xiao Hua was so difficult to deal with. The wishful steel staff was so unpredictable that it could resist the 7 stars great array formed by 12 illusory swordsmen. This 7 stars great array was what the Ling Feng sword sect relied on. Even a nascent soul stage cultivator would not be able to escape from the sword array. Feeling the cold sword intent wave after wave of impact on his soul, Ling Yunwu knew that he did not have much time. If he could not kill Xiao Hua in a short time, he could only get out of the flying sword. Naturally, he could imagine that if he were to fly out of the flying sword, the 7-star grand formation would definitely collapse, and Xiao Hua would definitely flee like a wisp of smoke. Ling Yunwu had already experienced Xiao Hua's lightning flight, and if he hadn't risked his life to exhaust his sword essence, it would absolutely be impossible for him to catch up to Xiao Hua. It was even to the extent that Ling Yunwu had some lingering fear. If he were to fly another 30 meters, he would definitely fall behind Xiao Hua. While Ling Yunwu was thinking, Xiao Hua moved again. His figure quickly flew up, waving the wishful steel staff while flying towards another sword cultivator. Ling Yunwu was anxious when he saw this. The sword cultivator was not a disciple of the Ling Feng sword sect and was not particularly familiar with the 7 stars great array. This was one of the few flaws. If Xiao Hua used the wishful steel staff, it was really possible for Xiao Hua to rush out. This guy, could it be that he also knows about arrays? Ling Yunwu was a little surprised. This is really difficult to understand, This guy is obviously a cultivator. In a battle, cultivators do not have many means. On the contrary, other means are endless. Fight! Ling Yunwu felt a burst of cold sword intent rushing into his brain and unconsciously gritted his teeth. Buzz! Ling Yunwu's flying sword emitted a burst of sword sound that shook the space. The sword light of the flying sword converged, and a dignified sword intent was emitted. Chapter 2354. Immediately after, the other flying swords of the 7 stars formation also responded, each with a sword hum. 7 sword intents filled with incomparable hatred and incomparable coldness appeared. Accompanied by a powerful force, they slowly surrounded Xiao Hua in a very mysterious trajectory. These forces were like a palm, with 7 fingers slowly closing in. Xiao Hua did not move. The wishful staff in his hand became heavier and heavier. For the first time, there was a feeling of sloppiness. Oh no! Xiao Hua's eyes turned sharply. Not only was his true essence completely solidified, but his body was also under a heavy pressure that he had never felt before. This kind of heavy pressure was enough to crush his body. Moreover, this heavy pressure also prevented Xiao Hua from approaching the sword cultivator and also prevented the wishful staff from hitting the sword cultivator's flying sword. Dang, Xiao Hua very nimbly put the wishful staff into the space, and the soul-absorbing bell once again sounded with difficulty. Unfortunately, the 12 sword cultivators were already prepared. Except for the flying sword transformed by Ling Yunwu, there was no movement. The other 11 flying swords only flashed at the same time and did not react anymore. I'm afraid I have to use the spiritual fire. Xiao Hua's heart sank. With a GA sound, the Phoenix celestial body was released. The imposing aura of heaven and earth was released again. Thunder and lightning flashed in the Phoenix celestial body, resisting the pressure of the 7 stars great array. Unfortunately, Ling Yunwu was already prepared. 3 of the flying swords flew out of 3 blood-red sword lights and directly hit the Phoenix celestial body. The Phoenix celestial body waved its claws, and 3 thick lightning struck the sword light. Wu, the sword light, was not afraid of the lightning and rushed straight through the lightning and hit the phoenix celestial body. With a J sound, the three sword lights flashed quickly, like three red lines binding the phoenix celestial body. Xiao Hua clearly felt that there was an unbreakable force of imprisonment coming from the blood-red sword light. Go! Xiao Hua opened his mouth slightly, and a little spiritual fire finally rushed out, burning the long sword transformed by Ling Yunwu. However, the spiritual fire only burned for a few feet before it was annihilated. It seemed that it could not resist the power of the Great Array. Of course, the spiritual fire also burned the power of the 7 stars Great Array, and Xiao Hua's body relaxed a lot. Fight! Xiao Hua was furious. He did not dare to release the spiritual fire again. As long as he roared, he once again raised the wishful steel staff and fiercely slammed it against the heavy pressure. Pong! The wishful steel staff hit the place where the spiritual fire had burned before, breaking the power of imprisonment again. Great! Xiao Hua was overjoyed. Just as he was about to use the wishful steel staff again to see if he could break through the 7 stars array, there was a loud bang. In the distance of the lower right side of Xiao Hua and the others, an extremely brilliant brilliance flashed, like a firecracker lit up in a dark night. What happened? Xiao Hua was slightly taken aback, and his Buddhist perception immediately swept out. However, before his Buddhist perception could sweep out of the 7 stars grand formation, another loud bang resounded diagonally above the source of the sound. Immediately after bang, 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 a series of explosions rang out around Xiao Hua and the others, completely surrounding Xiao Hua and the 7 stars great formation. Even more than that, when Xiao Hua's Buddhist perception swept out, the 9 places surrounded by the brilliance of the loud noise completely covered the entire Jinquan mountain spirit stone vein. I don't know about the other places, but the place where the disciples of Jinquan Mountain rest, isn't it the place where I wanted to go out to check the restriction? Xiao Hua suddenly realized. Needless to say, these 9 places must be the eye of the great formation laid out by Tu Hong. The restriction that Xiao Hua encountered before was also at the edge of the great formation. Fortunately, I did not break this restriction at that time. Xiao Hua thought very happily. Otherwise, Senior 2's formation would have caught nothing, and I would have been trapped by these sword cultivators. Well, now I don't have to worry about it anymore. Just wait for Senior 2's ruthless hand. Wong. Just when Xiao Hua was secretly happy, a series of earth-shattering sounds rang out from the 9 eye of the formation. An unparalleled pressure rushed out from the 9 eye of the formation at the same time, enveloping the entire Jinquan mountain spirit stone vein. Although Xiao Hua was still far away from the 9 eye of the formation, his Buddhist perception was already suppressed by that kind of pressure. This is extremely pure earth attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Xiao Hua's Buddhist perception was very sharp. Furthermore, his Buddhist perception was actually attacked by that enormous amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and had no choice but to retreat. Something's not right. Something's not right. When Xiao Hua's Buddhist perception was forced to retreat, he suddenly had a bad feeling. He seemed to have encountered this kind of suffocating Buddhist perception somewhere before. Avalanche. Xiao Hua instantly thought of the avalanche that he encountered when he came to Jinquan Mountain Spirit Stone. Although that avalanche was not especially scary to Xiao Hua, that earth-shattering snowflakes piled up and smashed down really left a deep impression on him. At this time, this extremely pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly poured in, and it was so unimaginable. Xiao Hua hurriedly released his Buddhist perception again, and at this time, in his Buddhist perception, in his ears, he could already hear a burst of huge wind that was like a tsunami on the sea. Spirit howl, a seemingly unfamiliar word, was born from his mind, and a kind of extremely terrifying feeling was born from an unknown primordial spirit. Immediately, countless goosebumps rose on Xiao Hua's body, and the waving of the wishful steel staff in his hand also slowed down. this spiritual energy of heaven and earth is a bit strange. Xiao Hua's Buddhist perception was still not able to explore too far before it was suppressed by the pressure of the spirit howl. But he still used his Buddhist perception to keenly feel that this pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth was different from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that he usually used for cultivation. This was a kind of strong, tyrannical, and extremely aggressive spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Senior 2, this is... Xiao Hua was extremely shocked. Without waiting for him to have any more superfluous thoughts, the tide-like spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into the 7 stars' great array and suddenly submerged Xiao Hua, Ling Yunwu, and the others. Not good. Xiao Hua was originally ignorant and did not know what Tu Hong was planning. However, when his whole body was submerged in the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth seemed to have spiritual intelligence and flocked around his body, madly pouring into his meridians. Only then did he suddenly realize, old man, this old ghost Tu Hong actually has such a scheme. Xiao Hua was shocked, and a kind of crisis that he had already experienced in the Ink Shadow Black Forest was actually quietly approaching him without him noticing. Run! Facing the surging spirit howl, Xiao Hua no longer had any chance of survival. At this moment, perhaps the only way to survive was to escape from the spirit stone mine of Mount Quanjin. But how could he escape? Ling Yunwu and the other sword cultivators were also frightened out of their wits like Xiao Hua. The massive amount of spiritual energy of heaven and earth also poured into their bodies like a tide, quickly wrapping around their sword origins and then rapidly expanding. Their bodies quickly reached their limits and could no longer accommodate the sword origins and spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Quick! Use the secret technique to transform into a sword. Ling Yunwu had already transformed into a sword, and seeing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth pouring into his body and accumulating in his sword, his primordial spirit was nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and even felt somewhat strengthened. He was much calmer than the other sword cultivators and immediately called out his sword. Damn your grandmother! Xiao Hua was furious and shouted, This young master will give you the sword pouch, and you all will withdraw this great array. We can all escape. As Xiao Hua spoke, he did not hesitate to throw out the sword pouch, and even the black silk wood from the heaven of heaven and earth was thrown out with his soul strands. Wong! The moment the sword pouch came out of the space, it was immediately filled with spiritual energy of heaven and earth and instantly expanded. The black silk wood was the same, and it emitted a dazzling brilliance, absorbing the strange spiritual energy of heaven and earth. You all! Xiao Hua knew the importance of this sword pouch to sword cultivators, and did not dare to let the sword pouch expand, and immediately put it back into the space, and shouted, You all, release the great array. This young master will immediately return it to you all after leaving the great array. How could Ling Yunwu and the others have the time to dawdle with Xiao Hua? They were using their secret technique to transform into swords and resist the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that was like a tide. However, their 7 stars great array was becoming more and more powerful, and Xiao Hua's entire body and Dharma body were confined by the great array, and he could only barely move within a few chi radius. Husband, not far away from the 7 stars great array, the heavily injured one had already woken up, and she saw that everyone was transforming into swords, and her primordial spirit was damaged. So how could she use her secret technique? She was panicking, and her body was already filled with the strange spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and she was doing her best to suppress the spiritual energy in her body. Sword friend, quickly release this young master. This young master can save your beloved. Xiao Hua waved his hand and took out the spiritual storage pouch. Seeing this, Ling Yunwu immediately thought of the situation when Xiao Hua took in several thunder-controlling sect disciples, and he had the intention to retreat. Unfortunately, before Ling Yunwu could withdraw the 7 stars great array, another change occurred. Rumble, 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 several loud tremors sounded, and just near Xiao Hua and the others, several spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly erupted like the explosion of the Great Flag Reef in the Bodhisattva Sea. Chalcedony. At this time, how could Xiao Hua not know where the problem was? These several chalcedony veins turned into pure spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and they completely disrupted the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth, causing the pressure of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to increase by more than several times. Yuan, who was closest to Xiao Hua, simply didn't have time to scream, and her body was immediately burst by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and then her body was torn apart, and her flesh and blood disappeared without a trace. Damn it! Seeing this, Xiao Hua's face turned pale, and he didn't say another word. The dragon transformation art was once again activated to the limit, and the cultivation method in his meridians was also activated to the limit, and the immortal body bestowment technique was also activated. However, the immortal body bestowment technique only focused on refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within the body, and he simply didn't dare to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth outside the body. When the second wave of spiritual energy of heaven and earth arrived, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had already scattered the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. At this time, Xiao Hua also didn't dare to take it back into his body, and the spiritual energy of heaven and earth also rushed in, mixing with the netherworld wind. The Dharma body that was originally not filled by the netherworld wind gradually solidified. Chapter 2355. However, how could Xiao Hua have the time to observe the changes in his Dharma body? He grumbled bitterly in his heart, trying his best to refine the spiritual chi of heaven and earth that rushed into his body, preventing his meridians and body from exploding from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Previously, Xiao Hua had racked his brains to increase his cultivation, wanting to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in his body. Now that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth had rushed in like a swarm of bees, he was worried. Not only was he worried, but he was also worried about his life. It was even more dangerous than Mo Zhao and the Black Forest. Several times, Xiao Hua's meridians had exceeded their limits, almost bursting, but the dragon transformation art had refined the spiritual chi of heaven and earth, allowing him to escape the disaster. The current Xiao Hua was like dancing on the edge of a sharp blade. If he was distracted for even a moment, he would either be stabbed to death by the blade or fall into the abyss to his death. Even the hidden Xiao Hua was in such a dangerous situation. What else was there to say about the others? The entire Mount Quanjin Spirit Stone vein within a few li radius had already turned into a living hell. As early as the first wave of spiritual chi was produced from the 9 formation cores, the sword-nurturing swordsmen and chi-refining disciples scattered around the periphery of the formation were already unable to withstand the impact of the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. One by one, their meridians exploded and their bodies were torn apart amidst their miserable screams. When the spiritual chi rushed into the range of Xiao Hua and the others, among the swordsmen and cultivators who were the first to be affected by the spiritual chi, the Foundation Establishment Middle Stage and Bright Sword Stage cultivators had already begun to flee to the surface. However, it was fine if they did not flee. As soon as they used the flying technique or rode on the flying sword, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth would surge into their bodies. However, if they continued to rush for another 100 zhong, or even 100 zhong, all of them would die from their meridians exploding. Even the bird cultivators with especially strong bodies and fast flying speed could only rush up a few 100 zhong before they were caught up by the second wave of spiritual chi caused by the jade essence. Without any suspense, they all exploded and died. By the time the second wave of spiritual howls had passed, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth within the entire MT Quanjin mine was filled with an endless flow of spiritual chi that swept back and forth, reaping the lives of swordsmen and cultivators over and over again. There is basically no distinction between friend and foe. Gradually, There was no sound within the space. At this moment, dozens of rather large bubbles appeared in dozens of places that were previously undetectable by divine sense. These bubbles seemed to be floating in the sea and slowly floated to the ground. Inside each bubble, there were at least 100 and at least 20 to 30 stunned cultivators. However, it was obvious that these cultivators were all wearing the disciple attire of Golden Spring Mountain, and none of them were wearing the Dao Sect's robes. General! Within a bubble-like array formation, Lon Xin was horrified. She had an incredulous look on her face as she whispered with a sound transmission. This is the General's plan? Tu Hong's face was also pale. He weakly sat cross-legged in the center of the bubble. He raised his head slightly and looked at the orange-yellow expanse outside the bubble. His nose and mouth smelled the heavy smell of blood and earth that permeated through the bubble, and his eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. But the lives of thousands of Dao Sect disciples. Lon Xion's eyes flashed with a trace of hesitation. She asked again, General, how will you explain this to the Dusk Sunset Mansion's assembly hall? Ha ha! Hearing this, Tu Hong laughed. He no longer sent a sound transmission to Lon Xian. He pointed a finger and said, Old brother Lon, take a look. Of my MT Chuanjin's tens of thousands of disciples, just how many are left? Besides, you also saw it. Just how many swordsmen invaded my MT Chuanjin's Spirit Stone mine? Just this father alone exterminated dozens of their illusory swordsmen. What can the Dusk Sunset Mansion's assembly hall blame this father for? They only want to kill sword cultivators, but they don't want to harm the lives of their own cultivators. Even if they lose the lives of their cultivators, they don't want to lose the lives of their own disciples. They only want my Sky Patrol City's disciples to pay with their lives. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Aren't these thousands of disciples of the Dao sect being buried with my MT Chuanjin's tens of thousands of disciples? Aren't these thousands or even tens of thousands of swordsmen dying here? This father only serves my Sky Patrol City Lord. So what does the assembly hall have to do with me? Cough, cough. Tu Hong was a bit agitated. Several mouthfuls of blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. Lon Xian quickly took out several pills and handed them to Tu Hong, saying, General, please don't be so agitated. Your golden core was damaged when you activated the array formation. If you don't repair it in time, it will affect your pregnancy. Humph, to be able to kill dozens of illusory swordsmen. That is this father's dream. Even if my golden core is damaged, this father is still willing. Tu Hong sneered, but he still took the pills. After Tu Hong took the pills, Lon Xian asked, General, are you sure that these dozens of illusory swordsmen will all perish? Of course. That tide of heaven and earth spiritual energy just now scared this father. This father never thought that this array formation would be so fierce. Tu Hong said with lingering fear, even if a nascent soul cultivator enters, as long as he doesn't rush out of the array formation, I fear that his nascent soul will explode. At this time, this father can guarantee that there won't be a single survivor. Just as Tu Hong finished speaking, there was a shrill eagle cry in the distance. This cry was naturally the voice of Ing Chao, the bird cultivator. His cultivation was the highest amongst the bird cultivators, and he had been hiding all this time, struggling bitterly. Now that he saw a Dao sect array formation appear beside him, how could he endure it? A black shadow rushed toward the bubble not too far away from Tu Hong. With Ing Chao's sharp wings, he easily drilled in. However, before he could breathe a sigh of relief, countless amounts of heaven and earth spiritual energy swarmed in from the hole he had just entered. In a moment, the entire array formation burst open. Over 100 Golden Springs Mountain disciples were only able to resist for a moment before their meridians burst open. Their corpses fell to the ground. Only Ing Chao was left standing where the bubble was, slightly stunned. However, in just a few breaths of time, Ing Chao's entire body began to tremble. The bird feathers that he had transformed into began to rapidly tremble, and his body began to slowly expand. With a light pung, a bloody light flashed. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, and bird feathers fell everywhere. Ing Chao had also fallen within the array formation. Ing Chao's fall wasn't too far away from Lan Xin. Lan Xin was barely able to see everything that happened. She was horrified and couldn't help but look down at her feet. "Don't look," Tu Hong sneered. "If that bird cultivator attacks our array formation, we will also die. As the saying goes, life and death are ruled by fate. Riches and honor are in the hands of the heavens." Yes, this subordinate understands. Lan Xin nodded. But this matter involved her own life, so she couldn't feel relieved. It was only after the bubble had risen for nearly an hour and near the edge of the array formation that she was finally able to relax her restless heart. Chapter 2356. All disciples listened to my orders. Tu Hong shouted, "There must be sword cultivator disciples outside the array. If we want to escape, there will be a fierce battle. Only by killing all the sword cultivators outside the array can we be considered to have escaped." Yes, this subordinate understands. All the disciples responded and prepared their magic tools and treasures. When the dozens of bubbles from Tu Hong's group came into contact with the restriction of the Grand Array, which was the edge of the tyrannical formation that Xiao Hua had encountered previously, a small passageway immediately appeared at the edge of the bubbles. Tu Hong and the others flew out one after another. On the ground of Gold Spring Mountain, the dozens of sword cultivators and the bird cultivators in the air were also panicking. After all, the activation of the array an hour ago had caused a huge change in the world's spiritual energy, and there were strong fluctuations of spiritual energy coming from the bottom of Gold Spring Mountain. However, in this hour, there were only fluctuations of spiritual energy. Moreover, the surrounding world's spiritual energy was sucked in like a hurricane, and there was no other movement. Thus, they were at a loss and could only wait quietly. Seeing thousands of Golden Spring Mountain disciples coming out from the ground, they first rushed down and prepared for battle. However, when Tu Hong and the rest flew up into the air and there were no sword cultivators or beast cultivators chasing after them, they felt that something was amiss. Thus, without thinking, they turned around and fled. Lan Xin sent out enough people to chase after them, and she accompanied Tu Hong. Beside her, there were dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators quietly standing in the air, looking down at the messy Gold Spring Mountain. "Look, this is the place where we Gold Spring Mountain disciples live and die. On the ground are the corpses and blood of your brothers. It's not that this old man doesn't want you to snatch their corpses, but it's just that the time hasn't come yet. If it weren't for us sacrificing too much, these sword cultivators and bird cultivators wouldn't have been fooled. In order to kill them all, this old man endured the pain in my heart. This old man's heart is silently bleeding like all of you. However, at this time, you have all seen that this old man's plan has finally succeeded. Although I have lost thousands of Gold Spring Mountain disciples' lives and thousands of Dao Sect disciples' lives, in the end, thousands of sword cultivators and bird cultivators were killed. Among them, there were even 20 illusory swordsmen. These are swordsmen that are comparable to late Golden Core cultivators and even close to nascent soul cultivators. Their sacrifice was worth it, and their sacrifice had a price. Yes, your subordinates understand. The disciples of Jin Shan Quan replied mournfully, "We are here to send off our brothers who died here and the Dao Sect disciples who came to reinforce us." As he spoke, Tu Hong took the lead and bowed. The numerous disciples and Lan Xin all had tears in their eyes as they bowed in respect. "Even if we leave today, we are still disciples of Golden Spring Mountain. We will definitely return in the future." Tu Hong waved his hand. "This Golden Spring Mountain will forever belong to my Golden Spring Mountain." "Yes, we will follow the orders of the general." Everyone shouted in unison. Tu Hong flew to midair and scanned the battlefield with his divine sense. He raised his eyebrows and instructed, "Disciples, search the battlefield carefully. If you see any intact corpses, regardless of whether they are disciples of Jin Quan Mountain or Dao sect, bury them properly. If there are any disciples who haven't fallen yet, try your best to save them. Yes. As they spoke, the dozens of disciples flew off in different directions, releasing their divine senses and searching inch by inch. After the time it took to eat a meal, the hundreds of disciples that had chased after the swordsmen and bird cultivators had all returned. Like this, there were even more disciples searching for corpses and survivors. Another half an hour passed before a disciple came to report to him. Reporting to the general, the corpses, those that are intact, or those that we were able to piece together, there are a total of 423 corpses. We were able to identify 201 corpses of Jin Quan Mountain disciples, 91 corpses of Dao sect disciples, and 131 corpses that we were unable to identify. As for those that have not fallen yet, there are a total of 42 people. There are 31 disciples of Jin Quan Mountain and 11 disciples of Dao sect. Oh, Tu Hong's eyebrows relaxed, and he excitedly said, "That's great. Take care of these surviving disciples and bring them back to Sky Patrol City. They are all meritorious service in this battle." Yes, this disciple understands. The disciple left. Tu Hong's lips curled into a smile. He looked at Lon Xin and said, "This old man never thought that there would be 11 Dao sect disciples that survived. This is truly this old man's good fortune." Lon Xin shook her head. "General, this old man is not good at war, but when it comes to guessing people's hearts, this old man is much better than you. In this old man's opinion, no." Tu Hong waved his hand and smiled. "These surviving disciples are all meritorious service in this battle. Since they are still alive, that is the will of the heavens. This old man cannot kill them. Moreover, truth and falsehood, falsehood and falsehood. If no one attacked this old man in the discussion hall, then those old fogies in the discussion hall might think of ways to deal with this old man. Also, if this old man killed these disciples, it was inevitable that news would leak out. At that time, wouldn't this old man be asking for trouble?" Yes, the general's thoughts are meticulous. This old man cannot compare. Lon Xin thought for a moment and understood. Then she pointed to the ground and whispered, "This old man used his divine sense to sweep the area. This great array formation's heaven and earth spiritual energy is like a tide. My divine sense cannot penetrate it. I wonder how far the general can see." Hee, as far as you can see, this old man can see. Tu Hong's eyes shined with pride. Even if a nascent soul cultivator or swordsman were to come, they still wouldn't be able to see as far as you and I can see. Hiss! Lon Xin sucked in a breath of cold air. She asked, "Then this great array formation, how do we deal with it?" "Deal with it?" Tu Hong glanced at Lon Xin. "If you were to deal with it, what would you do?" Lon Xin thought for a moment, and then shook her head. "This old man has no method. If I were to forcefully use a magic tool to break through the edges of the Great Array formation, then the heaven and earth spiritual energy within the Great Array formation would violently explode outwards. This old man would not be able to protect himself." Tu Hong said with a sound transmission, "I won't hide it from old brother Lon, but I don't dare to casually deal with this array formation. Even the Lord City Lord may not dare to touch it." Lon Xin didn't seem surprised as she heard this. She nodded and said, "How many top-grade spirit stone pillars? How many jade quintessences? All of it has turned into pure heaven and earth spiritual energy that is gathered in this several miles of space. Who would dare to touch it? The slightest bit of carelessness could lead to death. Moreover, the edges of this great array formation are abnormally stable. Even if a sword cultivator or a bird cultivator were to try and break through it, they wouldn't be able to do anything without the strength of a nascent soul. This place, I'm afraid that before the heaven and earth spiritual energy slowly dissipates, no one will touch it." That's right. Even if one covets the magic tools and magic tools inside, they still have to be famous. Tu Hong sighed. "Oh, that's right. Lon Exine suddenly realized. The storage bags and magic tools of tens of thousands of cultivators and sword cultivators. Who wouldn't covet them? Haha. I'm afraid that the storage bags won't be preserved. Those low-level magic tools won't be able to do anything either. Tu Hong laughed. Perhaps only high-level magic tools and magic tools will be preserved. We still have to hurry and report this to the Lord City Lord. This is also a great merit. Lon Exine nodded vigorously. However, Lon Exine hesitated again. She asked, "Do we have to stay here on guard?" "Gar my ass." Tu Hong sneered. "My Golden Spring Mountains matters have already been completed. The rest will naturally be taken care of by the other disciples. Besides, there are still disciples of the Tao sect in Sky Patrol City. It's impossible for them to let us continue to guard these treasures." Yes, this subordinate understands. Lon Exine looked up at the Golden Spring Mountain disciples who had already packed up. She waved her hand and said, "Disciples, let us return to Sky Patrol City." Yes. The Golden Spring Mountain disciples replied in unison. Everyone flew up into the air and flew towards Sky Patrol City. Inside the formation that Tu Hong had described as a lifeless place, right below the formation, where the waves of spirit howls had swept across, 12 dazzling flying swords had formed in 7 balls of light. These 7 balls of light were emitting a murderous sword intent, and a powerful force was strangely intertwined with each other, firmly confining a space of several hundred feet around them. The spirit howl swept through this space of several dozen feet, but it didn't dare to fly. It was blocked by the sword intent and force, so it easily penetrated, and the imprisoning force didn't weaken in the slightest because of the spirit howl's attack. Needless to say, this was the 7-star great array laid down by the 12 illusory swordsmen of the High Wind Sword sect. However, the spirit howl from several hours ago had been too violent. Even the illusory swordsmen were unable to resist it. They had no choice but to listen to Ling Yunwu's advice and temporarily use their secret technique to become one with the sword, entering the sword transformation realm in order to escape the spirit howl's destruction. However, the spirit howl seemed to be endless. After they entered the sword transformation realm, they couldn't escape from it. So, in order to have a chance of survival in the future, they had no choice but to fuse their primordial spirits with the flying swords and use their bodies to feed the swords, becoming sword spirits. Of course, they hated Xiao Hua to the bone. Even when they died, they still kept the 7-star great array intact. They wanted to firmly imprison Xiao Hua in this great array formation and allow the spirit howl to kill him. However, even when their consciousness was completely controlled by the flying swords and turned into flying swords, they still didn't see Xiao Hua's meridians burst open or his mortal body burst apart. This was something that they couldn't understand even when they died. Yes, they didn't know that when Xiao Hua was attacked by the spirit howl for the second time, his meridians were already unable to withstand such a huge amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth. He was completely disheartened and almost gave up. However, at this critical moment, Xiao Hua's gaze fell on the phoenix celestial body that had just been released from its shackles. His thoughts turned rapidly, and he thought of the cultivation method of the phoenix celestial body that he had obtained in the ink cloud black forest. Immediately, Xiao Hua let the phoenix celestial body descend and protect his body. Fortunately, the phoenix celestial body actually formed a barrier to resist the spirit howl, slightly blocking the wave-like spiritual qi of heaven and earth. The amount of spiritual qi of heaven and earth that rushed into Xiao Hua's body decreased slightly. However, this still wasn't enough. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth that rushed in still exceeded the limit that Xiao Hua's meridians could withstand. Xiao Hua had no choice but to harden his heart. While desperately urging the dragon transformation art and the celestial body enhancement technique, he endured the pain of splitting a trace of his primordial spirit and sending it into the phoenix celestial body. According to the cultivation method of the Phoenix celestial body that he had previously comprehended, he began to cultivate the celestial body. If you like this work, you are welcome to come again. Come to vote for recommendation or monthly votes. Chapter 2357. It was also a coincidence that when Xiaohua was comprehending this secret method in Sky Patrol City, he couldn't cultivate it because there was no spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushing into his embodiment. Now that he was in danger, the overwhelming spiritual howls became the best opportunity for Xiaohua to cultivate his Phoenix embodiment. Because of the cultivation of Xiaohua's Phoenix embodiment, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushing into the seven stars array was absorbed into his body. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth combined with the wind of hell and ink sand to form hundreds of millions of rotating vortexes. These vortexes were driven by the secret method and rotated according to an extremely mysterious trajectory in the array. The mysterious trajectory seemed to be the trajectory of the planets Xiaohua saw in the secret realm of Sunset Island, but it also didn't seem to be the same. Although this kind of rotation couldn't isolate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from impacting Xiaohua's body, it could still consume a lot of it. In this way, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushing into Xiaohua's body could only be barely suppressed within the limit of what he could bear, and Xiaohua could still survive in the spiritual howls. At this moment, within the confined space of several tens of feet, a phoenix celestial body the size of Xiaohua's palm wrapped its two wings tightly. The head and tail of the phoenix celestial body were also tightly hooked. Below this phoenix celestial body was Xiaohua, who was sitting cross-legged. The waves of spiritual howls were like the wind and waves of the sea. When they hit the phoenix embodiment, they weakened a little. When they hit Xiaohua's body, it immediately caused a burst of brilliance to flash around Xiaohua's body. His whole body seemed to expand a little, but after a moment, as the brilliance was annihilated, his body gradually shrank and returned to its original state. In Xiaohua's space, Cui Hongxin and the other 5, who were kept in the spirit storage bag, had been released from the spirit storage bag by Xiaohua. They were lying there calmly. Xiaohua didn't dare to keep them in the spirit storage bag. If they were really suffocated to death, it would be the biggest joke in the world. Although Cui Hongxin and the other 5 were lying there, the spiritual light of reverse light shone on their bodies. Even the fluctuations of the heavenly starry sky slowly passed through their bodies. Fine. All kinds of things had been arranged properly. Xiaohua was also under the protection of the embodiment. Even if he stabilized, he still didn't have the ability to break free from the seven stars array for the time being, so he could only go with the flow. Falling into such a dangerous situation is a blessing in disguise. This young master's wish of meditation has been fulfilled. I'll wait until I can break through this seven stars great array before I break out. Alas, Tu Hong's plan to kill so many sword cultivators and so many path set cultivators must have caused a stir in Sky Patrol City. In a few days, someone from Sky Patrol City will break the formation that generates the spirit howl. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. Tu Hong, I swear I won't let you off. This young master has never seen you before, and you actually want to kill this young master. If I don't cut off your head, my surname isn't Xiao. Unfortunately, is Xiaohua really surnamed Xiao? Moreover, Xiaohua had originally thought that he would be able to break out of the seal in a few days or even a few dozen days, but he had waited all this time, for as long as 5 years. It was a rare sunny day in Sky Patrol City. A round sun that was emitting a faint white halo hung in midair, like a huge Minghua stone that shone the few rays of light in Sky Patrol City. The snow in Sky Patrol City did not melt at all because of the sunny day. Without Xiaohua and the other bored people trampling on the snow was flat and tight. One by one, cultivators with faces of panic, joy, luck, jealousy, and other all kinds of expressions flew over the snow one after another. The clear sunlight cast their shadows on the snow, but it didn't leave any traces on the snow. In the center of Sky Patrol City, there was a huge bluestone building like Yanxi Mansion, but this building far surpassed Yanxi Mansion in terms of grandeur and scale. Moreover, this building was surrounded by spacious bluestone avenues. There was no snow on these avenues, and even to the extreme, there was not a single speck of dust. This was naturally the City Lord Mansion, where the City Lord of Sky Patrol City, Shueyu Master, lived. The City Lord Mansion had always been secluded. Whether it was the huge mansion door or the avenues around the City Lord Mansion, there was usually no one. No cultivator would come here to disturb the meditation of a nascent soul cultivator. Even after the sword battle began, all the cultivators' eyes fell on the Yanxi Mansion. No one would look at the City Lord Mansion because they knew that it was not yet time for Shueyu, Enlightened Master, to appear. However, it was different in recent days. Many guards of Sky Patrol City went in and out of the City Lord Mansion. There were even many late-stage Foundation establishment and even Golden Core cultivators coming in and out. Their faces were dignified. Inside the City Lord Mansion, in an extremely splendidly decorated palace, a futon was floating in the air. On it was a young cultivator in a Taoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk in his hand. His face was expressionless. This young cultivator's eyes were slightly narrowed. He looked extremely handsome, with white teeth and red lips. However, his two white eyebrows were so eye-catching, slender, and long. This nascent soul cultivator was none other than the City Lord of Sky Patrol City, Shueyu Master. In front of the praying mat stood two Gold Core stage cultivators. Behind the Gold Core stage cultivators were a dozen Foundation establishment late-stage cultivators. They held their breaths and stood respectfully, not daring to make the slightest sound. At this time, a clear voice rang out in the palace. It was the Golden Core cultivator standing on the left. Reporting to the City Lord, the battle for the Spirit Stone Veins has more or less concluded. At this point, the Golden Core cultivator stole a glance at Shueyu Master. Seeing that there was no reaction, he looked at the Golden Core cultivator next to him and coughed. My Sky Patrol City has 3 large Spirit Stone Veins and 4 small Spirit Stone Veins on the Shueyu Plateau. In order to cooperate with the plan of the Dao Sect cultivators, this subordinate followed the City Lord's instructions and informed the Yanxi Mansion of the locations of 1 large Spirit Stone Vein and 2 small Spirit Stone Veins. Now, we have received accurate information that the 7 Extremes mountain range and flowing ice valley have completely fallen into the hands of the sword cultivators. There is still no news from Jinshan Quan. Shueyu Master raised his head slightly and responded non-committally. What about the Dao Sect's Spirit Stone Veins? From what I know of the 7 Spirit Stone Veins in the state of Shi and the 4 Spirit Stone Veins in the state of Lian, the Dao Sect still has the 4 Spirit Stone Veins in the state of Shi and the 3 Spirit Stone Veins in the state of Lian. The rest have been taken by sword cultivators. The Golden Core cultivator said angrily, "Have something to say." "Haha, Jin Kung, is this what you said before the battle?" Shueyu Master said with a smile. "That's right, City Lord," Jin Kung said. "Isn't the result of this battle the same as what this subordinate said that day? No matter how many Spirit Stone Veins my Sky Patrol City offers, they will all be taken away by the sword cultivators. There will not be any Spirit Stone Veins left in the hands of my Sky Patrol City. Looking at the Spirit Stone Veins of the Dao Sect, most of them are still in their hands. The disciples they sent to my Sky Patrol City's Spirit Stone Veins are all Qi refinement disciples. How can I hold on to them?" Chapter 2358. Besides, this kind of low-level trick to test the waters can only be thought of by these closed-door cultivators. If it were any of the cultivators in the Sky Patrol City, they would never do such a stupid thing. Jin Kung said with a hint of dissatisfaction. "In that case, doesn't Sky Patrol City have a seat in Yanxi Mansion's meeting hall? I asked you to go, why don't you go?" Shueyu Master said with a smile. "I'm not going," Jin Kung proudly said. This subordinate would rather accompany the City Lord than be a decoration for them. Senior Brother Jin is right. The Golden Core cultivator at the side also rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "These Tao sect cultivators are too full of themselves. They think that only the disciples of their cultivation sects have a gully in their hearts. We are all just wild foxes. Even if senior apprentice brother Jean went, it would be difficult for him to do anything alone. So it's better not to go. Junior brother Fong really knows me." Jean Kung hurriedly nodded and said, "It's the strategy of testing the waters. When I told the location of the spiritual vein that day, I repeatedly mentioned it to the Taiching sect's Desun who was on duty that day. That old thing simply laughed and pretended not to understand." "That's right," the golden core cultivator with the surname Fong said. "Lung Biao, you seem to have something to say?" Shui Master looked at the golden core cultivator and asked curiously. "No, I have nothing to say." The golden core cultivator was called Fong Lung Biao. He smiled apologetically. "I just feel that these Tao sect cultivators think too much of themselves as the masters of Sky Patrol City." Shui Master still responded in a low voice and did not comment. Jean Kong glanced at Fong Lung Biao and reported to Shui Master, "City Lord, I feel that the sword cultivators' attack on Sky Patrol City is a little strange." "How strange?" Shui Master asked faintly. "In the beginning, this subordinate thought that this battle was the same as the previous one. It was just a sword cultivator who wanted to gain some benefits from the three kingdoms of cultivation. They wanted to get some materials for refining weapons, top-grade spirit stones, or pills, and the like. However, a few aristocratic families were in trouble. They even planned to attack and occupy those spirit stone veins. And then, look at the current battle situation. The sword cultivator's goal doesn't seem to be the spirit stone veins. If the Tao sect cultivators did not take the initiative to defend the spirit stone veins, they might not have thought of the spirit stone veins. We should be able to find out from the disciples they sent into the battle of the spirit stone mines. And so, I don't understand the purpose of the sword cultivators. Don't think too much if you don't know the truth. There's only one truth to everything. All guesses are just guesses until the truth is revealed," Shuiyu Sage said with a smile. "But our Sky Patrol City's disciples, Jean King's losts, SSSSSSSSSSS. That's fives, that's a loss. Does your heart ache?" Sage Shuiyu smiled. "Yes, these disciples were all killed under this subordinate's command. This subordinate can't bear it." Jean Kung nodded his head. "You're too soft-hearted. You won't be able to achieve anything great." Shuiyu's spiritual master pointed with his hand and smiled. "City Lord, please teach me." Jean Kung bowed and said, "Perhaps the onlooker sees more clearly." "Lung Bi, tell Jean Kung." The Snow Region sage did not explain. Fong Lingbai bowed and said, "Your subordinate understands." Then he explained to Jean Kung, "In my opinion, since the flames of war are in the Snow Highlands, the Sky Patrol City will bear the brunt of it. The Tao sect cultivators are not in the Sky Patrol City, but the sword cultivators came to attack the Sky Patrol City." Senior Brother Jean, what do you think of the damage to the Sky Patrol City? Well, Senior Brother Jean, you don't have to answer my question first. Think about it again. If our Sky Patrol City didn't suffer so much damage, wouldn't our Sky Patrol City be stronger than the other cities? How could the other Tao sects be at ease? In addition, it's only the first stage of the sword battle, and our Sky Patrol City has suffered heavy losses, far more than the other sections. In the second stage, when the late stage of Foundation establishment and Golden Core cultivators fight as the main force, would the nascent soul cultivators sitting in the meeting hall of the Yanxi Mansion have the nerve to ask the city lord to send more disciples? Jean Kong was a little enlightened and nodded. Your subordinate really didn't think so much. Today's little sacrifice could prevent even more losses tomorrow. In fact, most of the disciples who died were Qi refinement disciples and early stage Foundation establishment disciples. There are very few above the middle stage of Foundation establishment. It's not that Senior Brother Jean didn't think so much. Senior Brother Jean is in the middle of the situation. Fong Lingbai laughed. Those disciples are all fresh lives. One by one, They left us. How can senior brother Jean not feel guilty? Besides, those spirit stone veins are in the territory of She. How long can the sword cultivators occupy them? Let them dig with all their might. They can't take much away. Fong Lengbai added a few more words. Oh, is there any news from Jin Shan Quan? Hearing Fong Lengbai's words, the Snow Region sage seemed to have thought of something and raised his eyes to ask. Reporting to the governor, Jean Kung hurriedly said, there is no news from Junior Brother 2 for now. However, according to what I know, Junior Brother 2 sent a disciple from Jinshan Quan and 3 female disciples from the Imperial Thunder Sect to escort some things back to his residence 10 days ago. Jean Kung was a little puzzled because he had just said that there was no news from Jinshan Quan. He didn't know why the Snow Region sage was asking about it again. No news. I'm afraid there is good news. The Snow Region sage flicked his sleeves and said, go and take a look. What does the governor mean? Jean Kung was stunned. Ha. Do you want this old man to participate in the matters of you little dolls? The Snow Region sage laughed loudly. This old man only needs to listen to your complaints. There's no need to say anything more. Yes, your subordinate understands. Jean Kung hurriedly cupped his hands. Oh, speak of Tu Hong, and Tu Hong will be here. Go and welcome him. The Snow Region sage raised his white eyebrows as if he had seen something and said, perhaps Tu Hong will bring you good news. Oh, Junior Brother 2 has returned to the Sky Patrol City? Jean Kung was shocked. That means the spiritual stone mine in Jinshan Quan has been taken by a sword cultivator? The Snow Region sage did not say anything, but Fong Lengbai pulled Jean Kang's robe. Jean Kung hesitated for a moment before following Fong Lengbai out of the main hall. Junior Brother Fong. Once out of the main hall, Jean Kung transmitted his voice. Why didn't you let me finish? Fong Lengbai smiled bitterly. Without turning his head, he transmitted his voice back. Senior Brother Jean, Jin Quan Mountain is a huge spirit stone mine in our Sky Patrol City. Both you and I are unaware of the situation inside. Junior Brother Tu Hong reported to the City Lord alone. Didn't you see that the City Lord had already asked about Jin Quan Mountain twice? There must be something fishy about it. Since Junior Brother Tu Hong is back, you don't care if he lost the Jinshan Quan spiritual stone mine or not. You just need to welcome him in and wait for him to explain everything. Won't you know everything then? Sigh. All right, it's all because I was too stubborn. Jean Kung also smiled bitterly. It's okay for me to do some chores in the city. As for other things, it's impossible. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. It's even more difficult for me to handle these trivial matters. Fong Lengbai replied with a smile. Not long after, Fong Lengbai and Jean Kung brought Tu Hong into the main hall. Subordinate Tu Hong greets the governor. When Tu Hong saw the main hall, he hurriedly took a few steps forward and bowed. Tu Hong, you've worked hard. The Snow Region sage flicked his sleeves and said, you don't have to rush back. You just need to send a disciple to send a message. When your senior brother Jean receives the message, he will definitely send a disciple to receive you. Sword cultivators have invaded the country of Shi. There must be a lot of things happening in the Sky Patrol City. I dare not distract senior brother Jean Kong because of Quan Jin Shan, and I dare not let the City Lord worry. Therefore, I hurriedly rushed back to the City Lord to ask for forgiveness. The Jinshan Quan spiritual stone mine was lost in the end. The Snow Region sage said faintly. Yes, it's all because of my incompetence. I lost the spiritual stone mine. Tu Hong bowed and said, are you guilty of anything? Jinshan Quan's spiritual stone mine was already emptied. The Snow Region sage laughed. Jean Kung and Fong Lengbai were stunned. They looked at each other and suddenly realized that there must be something wrong. Sure enough, Tu Hong shook his head and said, even if the spiritual stone mine was emptied, it is still the foundation of my Sky Patrol City. It is also the foundation of my Jinshan Quan spiritual stone mine. I lost the face of my Sky Patrol City by abandoning it. Jinshan Quan's spiritual stone mine is gone. But there are other places. The Snow Region sage waved his hand and said, You are a disciple of Jin Shan Quan's spiritual stone mine. I will not forget about it. You can rest assured. Yes, I understand. Tu Hong nodded. No matter where I am, I will always be a disciple of Sky Patrol City. You've worked hard. I know about Jin Shan Quan's spiritual stone mine. You should report the results to Jin Kung and go back to rest. If you have nothing to do, you can go to Yinshi residence in a few days. Your senior brother Jin does not like to go. It's better for you to stay there. The Snow Region sage seemed to know about Jin Shan Quan's spiritual stone mine like the back of his hand. He did not wait for Tu Hong to report and said with a smile, "Yes, I thank the city master for not pursuing my crimes." Tu Hong quickly bowed and said, "However, I still want to report the results to the city master personally." All right, tell me. The Snow Region sage laughed. "You are good at setting up formations. You should have gained a lot from this battle. If you really exceed my expectations, I will not treat you unfairly." Tu Hong's expression did not change. He bowed and said, "I do have something that I would like the city master to make a decision on. However, I would like to ask the city master to listen to me first." "Oh." The Snow Region sage was stunned and asked curiously, "Could it be that the formation you set up is useless?" Chapter 2359. That's not it. Tu Hong shook his head. The effect of the array was surprisingly good. Then why? Shui Sage's face turned cold. Reporting to City Lord, this time, only 2,237 disciples of my Golden Spring Mountain survived. Tu Hong said calmly. What? Without waiting for Taoist Master Shuiyu to reveal a surprised expression, Jin Kung immediately jumped up and shouted, "According to what I know, your Golden Spring Mountain has over 31,000 disciples." Yet, Shuiyu Sage's face turned cold as he asked, "What about the Dao sect's reinforcements?" The Dao sect sent 5,608 people, but only 11 disciples survived. Tu Hong's tone remained calm. What? This time, even the nascent soul cultivator, Master Shuiyu, was unable to maintain his calm. He stood up from the praying mat and flew in front of Tu Hong with a single step. Say that again? Only 11 Dao sect disciples survived, and all of them were seriously injured. Tu Hong looked up and stared at Shuiyu Sage without fear. Tu Hong, you're too bold. Sage Shui's face was ashen. I allowed you to set up that vicious formation in the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine, but I didn't allow you to bury all of my Sky Patrol City's disciples. Nor did I allow you to bury all of the Dao sect's disciples who went to reinforce them. So many Sky Patrol City's disciples, so many Dao sect disciples. How can I explain this to the sect leaders of the three kingdoms? I'm afraid I can't protect you. When this subordinate set up this plan, he had already disregarded life and death. Tu Hong was not afraid at all. He bowed and said, "For Sky Patrol City, for the sake of killing sword cultivators, I'm willing to give up my head. I don't need the governor to make any promises for me. I'll explain everything to the governor, and then I'll go to the Yinshi mansion to receive my punishment." What's the result of the battle? Shuiyu Sage asked coldly. With so many Jin Quan Mountain disciples dead, I don't have the face to talk about the result of the battle. Tu Hong looked up at Shuiyu Sage and said sincerely, "Governor, please listen to my analysis of the battle at Jin Quan Mountain." All right, go ahead. Sage Shuiyu looked deeply at Tu Hong, and the anger on his face disappeared. He slowly flew back to the praying mat and sat down. Yes. Tu Hong bowed respectfully. He slowly explained the order he had received from the Sky Patrol City to cooperate with the Dao sect cultivators. He explained how he had lured all the sword cultivators and beast cultivators who were attacking Mount Quan Jin into the Great Formation of Mount Quan Jin, and how he had borrowed the power of the Great Formation to escape from the spirit howl of Mount Quan Jin. Finally, Tu Hong said earnestly, "I'll let the city lord know that when I saw so many Jin Quan Mountain disciples and Dao sect cultivators perishing, my heart felt as though it was being sliced by a knife. These were all warriors who had defeated sword cultivators. I can't wait to protect all of them. However, they're entangled with the sword cultivator, and I am powerless to separate them. Furthermore, there's a limit to the number of people that the formation can protect, and I am powerless to do so. I also gave them some yellow talismans that allowed them to enter the sanctuary, but they only focused on killing the enemy and did not activate the yellow talismans at all. When I saw them die, I really wanted to die with them. However, I still had to escape with these 2,000 people, and I also had to report the whole story of Mount Quan Jin to the city lord. I also had to report the righteous deed of the Dao sect cultivators to the Yanxi Prefecture's conference hall. That's why I suppressed my grief and returned to the Sky Patrol City. Don't tell this to me. Just keep it for the Yanxi Prefecture. Shuiyu Master flicked his sleeves and said, "You sacrificed so many disciples. How many sword cultivators did you kill?" "I'll let the city lord know. I roughly estimated that there should be more than 40,000 people." Tu Hong said softly. "Oh, there are so many?" Shuiyu Master raised his white eyebrows and looked at Tu Hong from head to toe. He asked in disbelief. Tu Hong nodded. "Yes, I was also surprised at that time. I don't know why the sword cultivators valued my Mount Quan Jin so much. That's why I made a sudden decision. You should have reported this to me first." Shuiyu Master's voice softened. "Since you can send disciples back to the Sky Patrol City, why didn't you report it? If I don't take responsibility for this, how can I be worthy of the city lord's cultivation?" Tu Hong puffed out his chest and said, "And if the city lord knows about this, then the city lord won't?" I know." Shuiyu Master flicked his sleeves and said, "Take the image of the array to Jin Kung and go back to rest." "Yes, I know." Tu Hong clapped his hands and took out the triangular magic weapon from his storage bag and handed it to Jin Kung. Then he respectfully bowed and slowly retreated. When Tu Hong left the main hall, Jin Kung was still holding the magic weapon in his hand and was slightly dazed. Fong Lung looked at Jin Kung and then looked at Shuiyu Master, who closed his eyes and said with a sigh, "Junior Brother 2 is really a great talent." "What great talent?" Jin Kung snapped out of his daze and said sternly, "He's simply a butcher, just like his name. That's 20,000 disciples of my Sky Patrol City. He actually said that they were dead, and they were dead, and he sent them to their deaths with his own hands. Senior Brother Jin, don't forget that Tu Hong also killed 40,000 sword cultivators. This kind of military service has never been seen since the beginning of the war." Fong Lung laughed at the side. Jin Kung sneered. "If I can disregard the lives of 30,000 cultivators, I can definitely kill 40,000 sword cultivators. Can you do it?" Fong Lung laughed. "I don't think I can. My surname is not Tu. Of course I can't." Jin Kung was still angry and was very disgusted by Tu Hong's actions. After all, that was the lives of tens of thousands of people. Shuiyu Master did not speak. Although his face had calmed down, there was still some anger in his eyes. It was obvious that he had some complaints about Tu Hong's extravagant spending. However, Tu Hong also made it clear that he did not report the news to Shuiyu Master beforehand, because he wanted to bear the consequences alone. Shuiyu Master wanted to scold Tu Hong, but he could not say it out loud. "Show us the image of Jin Quan Mountain." Shuiyu Master looked at the angry Jin Kung and Fong Lung and said calmly. Jin Kung didn't dare to be negligent. After responding with a yes, he channeled his spiritual power, and the magic treasure of Mitsubishi flew into the air again. After the yellow light flashed, a light curtain sprinkled on the main hall. On the light curtain of 10 feet in size, the snow-covered Quanjin Mountain Forest appeared. Then, the light screen began to show the sword cultivator's attack, and the blood disaster beast in the distance gradually approaching. The entire battle was shown in full detail. Chapter 2360. Needless to say, although Jin Kung and Fong Langbai were also Golden Core cultivators, they had never commanded tens of thousands of people to fight. Unconsciously, they were affected by the intensity and blood on the battlefield. They clenched their fists and felt their blood boiling. When they saw the corpses of the cultivators being eaten by the blood calamity beast, Tu Hong did not organize the Spring Gold Mountain disciples to rush out. Although everyone in the hall knew that it was not appropriate to take such measures, they could not help but show anger on their faces. Even the Foundation establishment disciples could not help but whisper. Sage Shueyu's white brows could not help but frown. This video had to be given to the Yinshi Prefecture. How could the Golden Core cultivators of the Dao sect see this tragedy? Sage Shueyu really wanted to cover something for Tu Hong. He really valued Tu Hong's talent. But looking at this video, how could he cover it up? However, if Sage Shueyu was confused, Tu Hong couldn't have kept this video until now, right? Could it be that he changed his personality? Oh, isn't this Yuan Qing from the Skyscraper Sword sect? Seeing Yuan Qing, Jin Keng and the others naturally recognized him. Fong Lingbai's eyes turned slightly, and he said anxiously, "Why didn't Junior Brother Tu mention this sword cultivator? If he can kill this guy, he can recover some losses. There's also a beast cultivator. This beast cultivator seems to be Ying Chao from the Valley of Owls." Jin Keng was stunned. Not only, Fong Lingbai's eyes were sharp. He saw several sword cultivators and beast cultivators, and he said anxiously, "There are also several unknown illusory swordsmen and several high-level beast cultivators." Behind them, the Foundation establishment cultivators were in an uproar. The discussion became louder. Junior Brother Tu, sigh. It's really too difficult for Junior Brother Tu. Fong Lingbai stole a glance at the calm Sage Shueyu and sighed. If there were only one or two illusory swordsmen, it would be fine. But now there are several of them, plus the beast cultivators, the blood calamity beast, and the spirit swallowing bugs. He can kill tens of thousands of sword cultivators. It's definitely a great achievement. Under such circumstances, the Spring Gold Mountain disciples and the Dao sect disciples can't escape. Jin Keng also nodded. Just now, I wrongly blamed Junior Brother Tu. With so many sword cultivators attacking together, there would not be many left even if they could escape, let alone kill tens of thousands of sword cultivators. But Jin Keng looked at Sage Shueyu and asked doubtfully, "These illusory swordsmen, have they all escaped?" True Master Shueyu did not say anything and only looked at the screen. 16 illusory swordsmen. When Tu Hong left Jinquan Mountain to face Yuan Qing, Ling Yunwu and the other swordsmen appeared on the screen, causing Jin Keng to be even more shocked. Which sword faction is this disciple from? Sage Shueyu asked. City Lord, please wait a moment. Jin Keng hurriedly clapped his hands and took out a jade slip. He immersed his divine sense into it for a moment and asked curiously, reporting to City Lord, "This seems to be Ling Yunwu of the High Wind Sword sect. According to the information we received, they should be near the Spirit Stone vein of the Lian country. How did they come to the Golden Spring Mountain?" Oh, Sage Shueyu only frowned slightly and did not say anything. Jin Keng and Fong Lingbai did not dare to ask more and continued to look at the screen with doubts. In the end, Yuan Qing and the other swordsmen, Battle Sword, Li Min, and the other beast cultivators, as well as the ordinary swordsmen, chased a group of sword cultivators underground. Ling Yunwu and the other illusory swordsmen also rushed into the Golden Spring Mountain vein without hesitation, completely ignoring the other swordsmen and cultivators. Jin Keng and Fong Lingbai looked at each other in confusion. However, the screen did not show the whereabouts of Ling Yunwu and the others. It only showed the bitter battle in the Golden Spring Mountain vein. Just as everyone was nervously watching, a yellow light appeared from the corner of the light screen and quickly covered everyone's line of sight. In just a few breaths of time, the entire light screen turned yellow and nothing else could be seen. Those dozens of illusory swordsmen, have they been killed? Jin Keng asked anxiously. Go and call Tu Hong back. Sage Shueyu sneered. He hasn't returned to his mansion yet. Yes. Jin Keng turned around and said, "This subordinate will go personally. This guy, he's actually still hiding something." City Lord, this subordinate will also go. Fong Lingbai bowed and said, "If Tu Hong killed those illusory swordsmen, it would be a great merit." As for the tens of thousands of Taoist sect cultivators, it would definitely be justifiable. Of course, their Tao sect cultivators put out a bounty just for Avoid Heaven Sword School's Qinjian. What can they say when our Sky Patrol City's disciples killed more than a dozen Qinjians? Jin Kong echoed. Go. Sage Shuiyu narrowed his eyes. Although there was no expression on his face, his words revealed his meaning. Yes, killing 20 illusory swordsmen would definitely be a great merit in the Sword Dao War. The lives of tens of thousands of cultivators were nothing compared to that. In the time it took to eat half a meal, Tu Hong followed Jin Kong and Fong Lingbai back to the main hall. Tu Hong didn't look proud, but Sage Shuiyu was slightly angry. When he saw Tu Hong, he didn't wait for him to speak and coldly said, Tu Hong, how dare you? Plop. Tu Hong immediately knelt down and begged with his head, City Lord, Your Excellency. This subordinate isn't trying to hide anything, nor is this subordinate trying to take credit. It's just that this subordinate is nervous. When this subordinate made up his mind to kill all the sword cultivators, this subordinate will definitely not accept this merit. This subordinate must take responsibility. City Lord, Jin Kong and Fong Lingbai bowed and said, the two of us are pleading for Tu Hong. Just now, this subordinate was too impatient and didn't wait for Tu Hong to finish speaking before condemning him. There's a reason why he didn't dare to tell us the result of the battle. You wait. Sage Shuiyu waved his hand and said, this old man is not a muddle-headed person. How can I not know the pros and cons? Since there is merit, there should be a reward. If there is a fault, there should be a punishment. This old man is asking Tu Hong, in front of this old man, what kind of trick is he playing? Yes. When Tu Hong heard this, large beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. His face was ashen and he kowtowed again. This subordinate deserves to die. This subordinate deserves to die. This subordinate did have a trace of a plan to present the result of the battle to the city lord after you are angry, so that the city lord can forgive this subordinate sin of using the Tao sect's cultivators as bait without permission. Humph, Sage Shuiyu snorted coldly. It wasn't clear if he heard it or not. In the main hall, only the sound of Tu Hong kowtowing could be heard. After a while, Sage Shuiyu said faintly, you brought Quan Jinshan's subordinates back to Sky Patrol City and didn't leave anyone to guard Quan Jinshan. When you came to this old man, you didn't even mention the great array of Quan Jinshan. Are you sure that the great array cannot be broken by sword cultivators? When Tu Hong heard this, he stopped kowtowing. However, he still didn't dare to raise his head. He said softly, the edge of the great array is now stable and has merged with the spiritual howl. If one doesn't have the strength of a nascent soul, one can't break it by force. If someone tries to break it by force, the spiritual howl will rush out and it will be more powerful than a dozen magic treasures exploding. Even if a nascent soul can teleport, I'm afraid they will also be affected by the spiritual howl. What if a formation master breaks the array from afar? Reporting to the city lord, the spiritual howl is like a tide in the great array. This spiritual howl is caused by the 9 formation eyes. In each formation eye, there are 81 huge spirit stone crystal pillars and 5 extremely hard jade essences in the depths of Quan Jinshan's spirit stone mine. All spiritual senses can't be used. Even if someone tries to break the array, they can only do it from nearby and not from afar. Tu Hong replied calmly. Sage Shuiyu nodded in satisfaction. After thinking for a while, he asked, what's the matter with the 16 Lingfeng sword sect swordsmen? When Tu Hong heard this, his face was filled with doubt. He raised his head and said, I don't know either. I only realized that there were 16 illusory swordsmen after I left the Great Array. It was because of them that I made this decision. When the 16 swordsmen entered the Great Array, they immediately rushed towards the jade essences in Quan Jinshan. They probably wanted to snatch those jade essences, right? Tu Hong thought for a while and said hesitantly, that's because I have to observe the situation of a swordsman attacking the Great Array. I can't look at them. They won't be able to escape. I can assure you of that. Tu Hong still didn't have a trace of arrogance. He nodded and said, Even that beast cultivator, Ing Chao, died when I left. There won't be anyone left alive in the Great Array. Inside the Great Array are the remains of tens of thousands of cultivators and swordsmen, as well as magic treasures and other things. You have to be careful. Sage Shuiyu nodded. When will the Great Array calm down? Tu Hong became even more hesitant. After pondering for a moment, he said, the power of this array is beyond this subordinate's expectations. This subordinate originally thought that it would be able to recover in 3 years, but from the looks of it, it will not stop until 10 years have passed. 10 years later, those illusory swordsmen and nascent soul cultivators will come out. We'll talk about it then. Sage Shuiyu nodded and said, at this time, it's still your golden core cultivators hunting. This old man won't interfere. City Lord, Jean Kong said anxiously, if you don't come out, how can we explain it to the Yanxi Manor? Those are the lives of tens of thousands of cultivators. This old man already said that this is your business and Tu Hong's business. What does it have to do with me? Sage Shuiyu flicked his sleeves, and his figure gradually faded away as if he was about to disappear. Tu Hong's face was filled with joy. He kowtowed and said, this subordinate thanks the city lord. This old man knows you have a gully in your heart, but don't play any tricks in front of this old man. What happened at Golden Spring Mountain will only happen once. There won't be a next time. Yes, this subordinate understands. Oh, right. Sage Shuiyu suddenly remembered something. His figure gradually appeared again. This old man was a little angry just now. I forgot to ask you, what do you want from this old man? Chapter 2361. Hearing this, Tu Hong's face turned slightly red. He was actually a little bashful as he said softly, this subordinate sought a female disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect during the battle at Golden Spring Mountain. That, I would like to request the city lord. Yuqing, seeing Tu Hong's expression, Shui Master was very happy and laughed. No wonder you sent a disciple of Jinquan Mountain back to Sky Patrol City to deliver things. It turns out that you have such a plan. Well, love between a man and a woman is the natural law. You have done a great service for my Sky Patrol City. How can I not agree? Thank you, City Lord. Tu Hong was overjoyed and kowtowed again. However, the voice of Shuiyu Master could no longer be heard in the hall. Get up, Junior 2. Jean Kung laughed. You are really hateful. No wonder the city lord is angry. He didn't even let you get up when he left. Tu Hong looked up and saw that Shuiyu Master was gone. He stood up trembling and smiled bitterly. Senior brothers, this little brother is also completely helpless. Tens of thousands of lives. I don't have any confidence at all. It's useless to say more now. Fong Lung nodded. The city lord has already let you go and even admitted that you have done a great service. Now the plan is to persuade those Taoist sect cultivators. The city lord is kind. I will never forget it. Tu Hong said respectfully. The fact that he did not pursue the matter is my biggest hope. I have never thought about the merits. As for the Taoist sect cultivators, I really don't care. TSK, Jean Kong was speechless. That's tens of thousands of lives. Aren't you afraid that you can't explain it to Yanxi Prefecture? I am a disciple of Sky Patrol City. There are many disciples of Yanxi Prefecture. Why should I be afraid of them? Tu Hong sneered. Don't talk to me about this. Fong Lung said, the city lord has ordered you to represent Sky Patrol City to enter Yanxi Prefecture's conference hall. You have to explain. That's senior brother Jean King's business. I don't want to get involved. Tu Hong quickly waved his hand. Jean Kong clapped his hands and took out the city lord token of Sky Patrol City. He handed it over and said with a smile, I didn't want to go in the first place. That's why I've been delaying it. Moreover, you've made such a big mistake and you want to clean up the mess yourself. I can't help you. Furthermore, if you want to dual cultivate with a disciple of the Imperial Lightning Sect, how can you do it if you don't interact with Qianmo of the Imperial Lightning Sect? Fong Lingbai laughed. Brothers, please don't laugh at me. Can't this little brother go over now? Tu Hong's face was flushed red as he took the City Lord token and smiled apologetically. Good, that's right. Jean Kung looked at Fong Lingbai and said with a smile, We'll send you to Yinshi Mansion. When you sit down in the conference hall, we'll go to your mansion to nag. Thank you for supporting me. Tu Hong bowed and thanked them. If it weren't for the two brothers, I wouldn't have dared to go. Ha! Jean Kung and Fong Lingbai both laughed. Each of them grabbed Tu Hong's hand, and the three of them walked out of the main hall. Behind them, the other Foundation establishment cultivators were also laughing and chatting with the three of them. When the three of them came to the conference hall of Yinshi Mansion, the Golden Core Realm cultivators of the Taoist sect were discussing. Seeing Jean Kung and others appear in the conference hall, Cheng Ming, who was in charge today, raised his eyebrows and said, It turns out that the Friends of Sky Patrol City have come to visit. Come, please take a seat. With that, he clapped his hands, and two futons appeared out of thin air, spinning and landing in front of the three of them. Then, he looked at the empty futon opposite him and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist Jean, it is said that this seat in the conference hall is prepared for you. Why haven't you come after so long? Are you going to sit on it today? No. Jean Kung smiled and shook his head. Someone is going to sit on it today, but it's not me. Oh, could it be fellow Taoist Fong? Or this fellow Taoist? Cheng Ming obviously did not know Tu Hong and looked him up and down. Later, I will naturally take out the City Lord token. Jean King's face tightened. He did not sit down and said lightly, However, before that, I would like to ask fellow Taoist Cheng to tell me about the battle situation. This, Cheng Ming hesitated and said with a smile, the battle situation of the Sword Dao battle. My conference hall will basically prepare another copy and send it to the City Lord Mansion. I think fellow Taoist Jean can see it in the City Lord Mansion, right? Why bother with Cheng Ming's nagging? Of course I can see it, Jean Kong said with a smile. However, my Sky Patrol City's 3 Spirit Stone veins have been lost. Fellow Taoist Cheng has to give my Sky Patrol City an explanation, right? Oh, the Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone veins have also fallen into the enemy's hands? Cheng Ming was shocked and immediately came to a realization. He looked at Tu Hong and asked, Could it be that this fellow Taoist has returned from Jin Quan Mountain? That's right. I am Tu Hong from the Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone veins. Tu Hong stepped forward and bowed. Greetings, fellow Taoists from Dao sect. Greetings, fellow Taoists too. The crowd did not dare to delay and stood up to return the greeting. Cheng Ming asked curiously, The Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone veins have already fallen into the enemy's hands. Why did my Dao sect disciples return? Only 3 Imperial Thunder sect disciples returned first? Who said that the Jin Quan Mountain Spirit Stone veins have fallen into the enemy's hands? Jean Kung laughed. I only said that 3 Spirit Stone veins have been lost, right? What do you mean? Xiang Ming from Huanhua sect was stunned and asked. Huanhua sect had sent the most disciples to Jin Quan Mountain. How could he not be anxious? Junior Brother 2 set up a formation at Jin Quan Mountain and killed close to 40,000 sword cultivators and beast cultivators in one fell swoop. Furthermore, there were 20 over illusory swordsmen and 10 over high-level beast cultivators and bird cultivators who were buried in the formation. On the way here, Tu Hong had already warned Jean Kung. Jean Kung laughed heartily and told him what Tu Hong had said. 20 over illusory swordsmen? That is comparable to a late golden core stage cultivator. Even if they were to meet a nascent soul stage senior, they might not necessarily fall, right? Xiang Ming was dumbfounded as he spoke in disbelief. All the other gold core cultivators looked at each other. After a moment of silence, they immediately began to discuss loudly. All of their words were filled with disbelief and doubt. Fellow Taoists too. Qian Mo opened his mouth. Qian Mo asked the Imperial Thunder sect disciples who returned. According to them, your Jin Quan Mountain disciples are not that many. How could they have killed so many sword cultivators? What about your Jin Quan Mountain disciples? What about the casualties of my Dao sect disciples? I know that all of you won't believe me. Tu Hong laughed. However, I have evidence in my hands. I will let all of you know immediately. In this battle, my Dao sect has indeed killed 20 over illusory swordsmen. Chapter 2362. Haha, if that's the case. Fellow 2, your contribution is the greatest since the start of the war. No wonder the Snow Region Senior entrusted you with the important task of managing the conference hall. That's right. Congratulations, Fellow 2. The Gold Core cultivators came to a realization and cupped their hands to congratulate him. Thank you, fellow Taoists. This contribution of mine is inseparable from the plans that you've made in the conference hall. This is all thanks to you, fellow Taoists. I don't dare to praise myself. Tu Hong humbly took out the City Lord token of Sky Patrol City and handed it to Cheng Ming. He smiled apologetically and said, Fellow Taoist Cheng, please verify it. Today, I have been entrusted by the City Lord to enter the conference hall. Good. Cheng Ming took the City Lord token and looked at it for a moment before passing it to the other cultivators beside him. He cupped his hands and said, In the future, with the help of Sky Patrol City's fellow Taoists too, our conference hall will be like a tiger that has grown wings. We will defeat the sword cultivators of Huan country. I still need to borrow the strength of all of you. Sky Patrol City will definitely do its best to support you. Tu Hong said with a smile. After everyone had checked the City Lord token, Tu Hong took it again and said with a smile, Can I take a seat now? Please. Cheng Ming raised his hand and said, Please. The other cultivators said in unison, Thank you. Tu Hong stepped forward and sat on the empty praying mat. Jin Kung and Fong Lingbai also sat on the 2 praying mats. Fellow Taoist too has killed 40,000 sword cultivators and nearly 30 more sword cultivators. This achievement should be immediately transmitted to the Dao sect cultivators who are currently fighting. It will also let them know that sword cultivators are nothing in the hands of our cultivators, unable to withstand a single blow. This will also boost their morale. Cheng Ming smiled. Yes, morale is the most important thing in this war. Even if we're going to lose, we can't lose morale. A cultivator clapped his hands and said. When Tu Hong heard this, a trace of contempt flashed in his eyes. He glanced at Jin Kung and Fong Lingbai. Their eyes were still the same. Yes, that's right. I will immediately issue the conference hall token. Cheng Ming clapped his hands and said, Fellow Taoist Cheng, don't worry. Tu Hong's expression changed slightly. His smile turned into a miserable one. He waved his hand and said, Fellow Taoist, please listen to my explanation. You can make a decision later. Fellow Taoist too, please speak. Cheng Ming laughed. I haven't been this happy in a long time. I can't help but share this good news with all the disciples who are fighting hard. Well, I can understand fellow Cheng's feelings. Tu Hong nodded. However, this war has always been cruel. It's never a place that only gives out good news. Oh, Cheng Ming's eyelids twitched. He had a bad premonition. I, too, have killed 40,000 sword cultivators. But my Golden Spring Mountain's 30,000 men also fell in this battle. Tu Hong said sadly, Even when I return to Sky Patrol City, I can't bring their bodies back. The meeting hall immediately fell silent. Apart from gasps of surprise, there was no other sound. What about my Path Sect's disciples? Xiang Ming said coldly. Don't tell me that all of them fell. Tu Hong looked at Xiang Ming and replied calmly, Of course not. Oh, hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, the next moment, everyone almost fainted. I, too, have brought 11 severely injured Path Sect's disciples back to Sky Patrol City. They are now on their way to the other sect's encampments. What? My Path Sect's disciples. That's more than 5,000 people. Xiang Ming stood up suddenly and said angrily, Gone just like that. You have to give me an explanation. Yes, Tu Hong, 5,000 people. How could you let them all fall? Many Golden Core adepts scolded. This situation was indeed within Tu Hong's expectations. However, His face still revealed a miserable expression as he stood up and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoists, this old man feels guilty in his heart. Those 31,000 disciples of Golden Spring Mountain had gone through life and death with me. As for your 5,000 disciples, although I do not have such a deep relationship with them, but since all of you sent them to Golden Spring Mountain, how could I not treat them as my own disciples? Rest assured, my friends, I am not disloyal. Even during the battle, I placed these disciples in the middle and did not let them fall so easily. Tu Hong. Qian Mo's expression did not change. After all, only Xiao Hua and the other 6 disciples of Imperial Thunder Sect had fallen. Their losses were the least. Tell me, how did these disciples fall? What is your big formation? Tu Hong nodded and took a deep breath. He suppressed his sobbing tone and said, Senior Brother Jean just said that the spiritual stone vein in Mount Quanjin has been lost and is no longer in the hands of Sky Patrol City. Yes, of course, it is not in the hands of the sword cultivators. It was I, too, who had laid down a large array in the Golden Spring Mountains Spirit Stone Mine. My Golden Spring Mountains disciples and Dao Sect's disciples had lured several tens of thousands of sword cultivators, especially close to 30 Golden Dance Stage sword cultivators, into the large array before falling. So to be honest, if not for the fact that I have to preside over the big formation and cannot die otherwise, I would have entered the formation to fight. Those 5,000 Dao Sect disciples are really adorable. They are really the most adorable people in this battle. As he said, Tu Hong looked at Jean Kong. Jean Kong clapped his hands, and the magic treasure of Mitsubishi flew up. The screen once again showed the bloody battle situation. When the cultivators finished watching, their hearts were shaken. They were even more excited than Jean Kong and Fong Long. They were cheering for the cultivators who fought to the death. They were also praising Tu Hong's decision that day. Of course, this praise was more derogatory, but at this point, what else could they say? After more than 10 Golden Core cultivators inquired about the details in detail, Cheng Ming and the rest transmitted their voices and said coldly, Fellow Taoists too, although you're now a member of my discussion hall, you have killed 5,000 of my Dao Sect's cultivators. We need to discuss this. Fellow Taoists too, please leave us for a moment. All right. Tu Hong stood up and bowed to everyone. I feel guilty in my heart. Fellow Taoists, please make a decision. After speaking, he looked at Jean Kong and Fong Long. The 3 of them left the discussion hall. After 2 hours, Tu Hong and the other 2 were invited back into the discussion hall. At this time, the atmosphere in the discussion hall had calmed down. Fellow Taoist too. Cheng Ming went straight to the point. This time, Fellow Taoist too has contributed greatly. However, the number of cultivators who died in this battle is also the highest. I am ashamed. Tu Hong bowed humbly. However, we have already reported to our respective mountain sections. Although some of the sect heads were extremely dissatisfied, most of them understood Fellow Taoist 2's difficulties. Cheng Ming continued. As the saying goes, killing 1,000 enemies is equivalent to sacrificing 800 of your own men. Furthermore, there are close to 20 Golden Core cultivators among them. Many thanks to the various sect heads. Tu Hong immediately bowed to the sky. Of course, we will not erase Fellow Taoist 2's contribution. Cheng Ming continued. However, half of the contribution is taken up by our Dao Sect's disciples. Fellow Taoist Cheng. Jean Kong was unhappy. He stood up and said, My Golden Spring Mountain's tens of thousands of disciples. Senior Jean. Tu Hong hurriedly stopped him and said, Half of the contribution is taken up by those tens of thousands of disciples. I will definitely not take up half of the contribution. Golden Spring Mountain's tens of thousands of disciples are all Fellow Taoist 2's disciples. Naturally, their contribution will be taken up by Fellow Taoist 2 alone. Cheng Ming laughed. My Dao Sect's 5,000 disciples are not represented by anyone. Therefore, I have no choice but to inconvenience the Golden Spring Mountain's disciples. And whatever you say, Tu Hong smiled apologetically. All right, Cheng Ming nodded and said, The magic tools and treasures within the Golden Spring Mountain's great array, as well as the flying swords of the sword cultivators, Sky Patrol City can take half of it. The remaining half will be distributed by the various Dao sects according to the number of disciples they have lost. Consider it as compensation for us. Jin Kung still wanted to say something, but was stopped by Fong Long. Tu Hong said without hesitation, "Of course, I have no objections to this. However, these things will only be distributed after 10 years. No worries." Cheng Ming nodded and said, "As long as fellow Taoist 2 agrees, we will go to Golden Spring Mountain to distribute it after 10 years. All right. Also, fellow Taoist 2's contribution will be publicized by the various Tao sect sections. Fellow Taoist 2 is the greatest contributor to this battle." Cheng Ming continued, "As for the other 11 disciples who survived, our conference hall will reward them heavily and record their contributions. As for the 5,000 warriors who died, they will also be recorded as their contributions." "Yes, that should be the case." Tu Hong agreed obediently. "Great." Cheng Ming did not expect Tu Hong to be so easy to talk to and did not refute him at all. In the end, he clapped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist 2 is decisive and excellent in commanding. The conference hall welcomes talents like fellow Taoist 2. I don't dare. It's all thanks to the support of fellow Taoists." Tu Hong hurriedly got up and said. However, when Tu Hong got up, his eyes looked around. Although many Golden Core cultivators returned the salute, some of them had gloomy eyes and only raised their hands perfunctorily. At this moment, the center of the conference hall flashed with a strong brilliance. Before Qing Ming could activate his magic power, a human figure slowly flashed out from the brilliance. Everyone was shocked. When they saw clearly, they all stood up and bowed, shouting, "Junior greets Master Shuiyu." The person who appeared in the Yin Shi Mansion's conference hall was actually the City Lord of Sky Patrol City. This was the first time he came to the Yin Shi Mansion's conference hall. "All of you get up." Shuiyu Enlightened Master waved his sleeves, and everyone felt a force supporting them. It was as if 2 warm hands were supporting their shoulders. "Thank you, Senior." No one dared to struggle. They straightened up and respectfully replied. Master Shuiyu walked a few steps in the air and came to Tu Hong's side. He lifted his leg and sat on it. Seeing this, everyone no longer dared to stand next to the praying mat. Their figures fluttered and slowly flew to the place where Jin Kung and Fong Lingbai were standing before. They were standing respectfully below Master Shuiyu. Chapter 2363. Cheng Ming stood in front of everyone and said, "I'm Cheng Ming from the Ming Country's Celestial Ascension sect. I'm in charge of today's meeting hall. Senior, please tell me what you need." "Hee, I haven't seen Li Feng from your sect in a long time." Shuiyu Enlightened Master looked around and smiled. "Yes, and the sect masters of my little friends, we old farts have been cultivating every day. We can't compare to your hot-blooded and exciting lives. Senior is well-versed in the Tao of heaven, and your path of cultivation leads to the heavens. You are our role model." Cheng Ming smiled apologetically and said, "How could our game be worthy of Senior's attention?" Shuiyu Enlightened Master only smiled. He looked around and said, "I haven't been to this hall in a long time. Alas, perhaps it won't be long before I have to meet the sect masters of my little friends. Every time we meet, people are in a terrible situation." Hearing this, Cheng Ming and the others could guess why Shuiyu Enlightened Master was here. Cheng Ming turned around and looked at Shanghua Zong and the other cultivators from the 3 cultivation countries. They all nodded. "You're right." Cheng Ming turned around and respectfully replied, "Every battle was started by the sword cultivators. Every time, the Dao sect and the sword cultivators lost tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of corpses. This is also unavoidable. After all, this is a cruel war, and it can't be compared to a normal dispute." Then he hesitated for a moment and said, "Also, regarding Tu Hong, we have already decided. Although my sect lost 5,000 disciples, the results of this battle are obvious. 5,000 men sacrificed their lives for the Tao sect. Their deaths were worthy and as heavy as a mountain. Regarding this matter, fellow Taoist Tu Hong's methods were indeed a little inappropriate. However, under the circumstances at that time, he had no choice but to do so. We have already discussed the details with fellow Taoist Tu Hong. Shui Yu enlightened master waved his hand and laughed. This is your game. I won't participate. Tu Hong can decide what he does or doesn't do. I won't interfere with your decision. Yes. Cheng Ming didn't understand. He thought the same as everyone else. He thought that Shui Yuzhenren was here to defend Tu Hong. Aha! I'm here today because I have something good to discuss with the Imperial Thunder Sect. A smile appeared on Sage Shui's face as his gaze fell upon Qian Mo. Not only was Qian Mo shocked, even Tu Hong himself was absolutely shocked. Then, he became wild with joy. His original intention was to mention this to the old man in advance. After this matter was over, he would ask the old man to pass on a message to the Imperial Thunder Sect. This way, he would be able to speak to Qian Mo of the Imperial Thunder Sect. However, he had never expected that Shui Yu Sage would personally come to the conference hall and propose marriage in front of all the golden core cultivators of the Tao sects. His face was too big, so much so that it might even become a story to be told by the cultivators of the three kingdoms. What made Tu Hong the happiest was that not only was Master Shui Yu's trust and encouragement in him, but Master Shui Yu's arrival also meant that the Imperial Thunder Sect definitely wouldn't have any reason to refuse. The Imperial Thunder Sect definitely valued the face of a nascent soul cultivator. Under the circumstances where Chui Hongshun had already died in the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine, Dui Qiming could only agree to the proposal of dual cultivation. Qian Mo's face was filled with doubt as he stepped forward and bowed. Junior Qian Mo of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Master Shui Yu. May I know? Oh, so it's a young friend from the Heavenly Thunder Palace. Master Shui Yu smiled. I'm here today to make a proposal for a marriage alliance between my Heavenly Thunder Sect and the Imperial Thunder Sect. Qian Mo was even more surprised as he looked at Master Shui Yu in confusion. He smiled apologetically. May I know which disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect you're talking about? Is it a male disciple or a female disciple? Young friend, you should know about the 3 female disciples who returned from the Golden Spring Mountain Spirit Stone Mine. Master Shui Yu went straight to the point and said, one of them was chosen by Tu Hong. Oh, Qian Mo understood and naturally turned to look at Tu Hong. Tu Hong was very obedient at this moment as he lowered his head slightly and didn't say anything. I won't talk about Tu Hong's merits and demerits. Master Shui Yu smiled. However, since he's a capable disciple of my Heavenly Thunder Sect, and he rarely speaks in front of me, I can't just ignore his matters. Besides, this is the first time I'm matchmaking someone. I don't know if it's appropriate. All right, Qian Mo muttered in his heart. Why didn't you propose earlier or later? Why did you propose now? How could it not be because of Tu Hong's merits? Even if my conference hall judged that Tu Hong was at fault, now that you're here, I can't not reconsider, right? This is the first time I'm matchmaking someone. Sai, my Imperial Thunder Sect, must accept this. However, he had seen the 3 female disciples from the Imperial Thunder Sect who went to Golden Spring Mountain. They seemed to be the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and weren't particularly outstanding. If they could really form a marriage alliance with the Heavenly Thunder Sect, it would be considered as the female disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect climbing up the social ladder. Oh, Qian Mo suddenly realized, those who went to Golden Spring Mountain, aren't they the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect from the Shocking Thunder Palace? Damn it, the fate of the first team. Why is it so tragic? First, they were besieged by thousands of sword cultivators at Chicken Crow Mountain. If they hadn't left first, they would have all died in the first battle. What a pity, even if they escaped the first hurdle, they couldn't escape the second one. Tens of thousands of sword cultivators besieged them, TSK. However, they died a worthy death. I reckon the conference hall will reward them handsomely. It's better than being killed silently in the wilderness. Qianmo then bowed and said, I'm sorry for my rudeness. May I know which female cultivator of the Imperial Thunder sect you're referring to? Tu Hong has to say it himself. Shuiyu Spiritual Master said with a smile. Thank you, City Master. Tu Hong's eyes were almost filled with tears. He bowed deeply. I didn't expect the City Master to care so much for me. I'm willing to sacrifice my life for you. TSK. Speak auspicious words on an auspicious day. Shuiyu Spiritual Master said with a smile. Since you want to be their son-in-law, you have to be sincere and cooperate with the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect. Yes, I understand. Tu Hong nodded. Qianmo smiled apologetically. Since you came to the conference hall and proposed marriage in front of so many fellow cultivators, I'm afraid I don't have the qualifications to accept it in person. Would you like to ask Qianlei Zi of my humble sect to come forward? Fine. I haven't seen Qianlei Zi for a long time. Shuiyu Spiritual Master said with a wave of his sleeve. For the sake of the younger generation, it's good to see an old friend. Qianmo didn't dare to delay and hurriedly activated a secret technique. Not long after, Qianlei Zi's red face appeared on the light screen. Chapter 2364. Oh, that's right. Qian Diheng slapped his forehead and exclaimed, I was wondering why I felt that something was wrong. So it's here. Why didn't I think of going to the Jade Archive Hall? After saying that, he didn't stay any longer. Without saying another word, he turned around and flew out of the cave. Xiangyang, go with Qian Diheng and have a look. Helplessness came to his senses and hurriedly shouted. Yes, I'll go now. Xiangyang was equally excited. He quickly caught up and flew into the sky. Marshal Uncle Zhua. Shui glanced at Sun Shu. Both of them walked over and chatted with Zhuo Minghui. Although they didn't talk much, Zhuo Minghui's shyness was soon gone. She even whispered some private words to them. In just a few hours, Xiangyang and Qian Diheng had returned. Damn it, I really shed a few tears for that guy. Qian Diheng cursed. I knew that guy had a long life. He wouldn't die just like that. What? Helplessness hurriedly got up and asked, Where's Hong Shun? His natal spiritual tablet. Ah, good, I know. Seeing the anxious look in the cave residence, Xiangyang smiled and said, I followed junior brother Qian to the Zhenlei Palace. I didn't enter the Jade Archive Hall. The Jade Archive Hall of the Zhenlei Palace was closed by the sect leader at the beginning of the sword battle. Without the sect leader's personal order, no one can enter. Qian Diheng was a little angry. Even I couldn't enter the Jade Archive Hall. Helplessness listened, and his face darkened. He glared at Xiangyang and scolded. Since he didn't enter the Jade Archive Hall, why are you so happy? Master. Xiangyang smiled apologetically. I didn't enter the Jade Archive Hall, but I saw Jin Liang who was on duty. What did he say? Did he know that Hongshan's natal spiritual tablet wasn't damaged? Helplessness asked helplessly. Xiangyang smiled bitterly and explained, the sect leader also ordered that the disciples on duty in the Jade Archive Hall must report the situation of the natal spiritual tablet to the deacon. He wanted to scold Xiangyang, but he was too lazy to do so. After talking for so long, he still didn't know about Chui Hongshun and Xiao Hua's life spirit tablets. Xiangyang, how do you know that Xiao Hua and Chui Hongshun are fine? Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. She knew that Xiangyang was a steady person. If he wasn't certain, he wouldn't be so happy. All right, teacher, mother understands. Xiangyang said when Jin Liang saw that it was me and junior brother Qian. Other than explaining to junior brother Qian who wanted to barge into the Jade Archive Hall, he also smiled and told me something. Oh, Zhuo Minghui asked curiously, what did Jin Liang say? Jin Liang said that as early as a few days ago, the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace had already come to the Jade Archive Hall to look at the natal spiritual tablets of the disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. Moreover, they came again yesterday with the sect leader's handwritten order in their hands. They specially sealed the natal spiritual tablets of some disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. Other than the sect leader, no one can look at them. Xiangyang emphasized the words some disciples. as if Jin Liang was the one explaining. That dog. Qian Diheng curled his lips and sneered. He didn't let me in and even hinted at me from the side. If he didn't say that it was related to my brother, I wouldn't have let him off so easily. Helplessly ignoring Qian Diheng, he pondered for a moment and said cautiously, Xiang Yang, are you sure that what Jin Liang said was related to Cui Hongshan and Xiaohua? Yes, I'm sure. Then, Xiang Yang told him about Jin Qing and Xiaohua. He explained with a smile, junior brother Xiao and Jin Qing got to know each other after a fight. If he saw that junior brother Zhao's natal spiritual tablet was damaged, he would definitely tell me secretly. What he said didn't violate the rules of the Jade Archive Hall, and also told me about the two junior brothers. Yes, I understand. Helplessly sighed in relief. Zhuo and Minghui and the others also looked better. However, the sect leader clearly knew that junior brother Xiao and junior brother Cui didn't die. Why did he still give out the reward? Xiang Yang asked with a frown. Senior brother Xiang, this is the sect leader's business. Don't make wild guesses if there's nothing important. Qian Diheng said bluntly. Then, he bowed to helplessly and said, Martial uncle helplessly, since Xiaohua didn't die, what I said just now was nonsense. I still have something to do. Goodbye. Good. Xiang Yang nodded and said to Xiang Yang, help me see the guests out. No need. I'll take my leave now. Qian Diheng nodded slightly to everyone again, turned around, and left as nimbly as when he came. This guy, Sun Shu, glanced at Qian Diheng's back and said in a low voice, unless Xiaohua is here, he looks down on everyone. He won't say a word to anyone. Beside him, Xiang Yang smiled bitterly and said to himself, What's this? You haven't seen how that guy messed around in the Jade Archive Hall. If it weren't for the sect leader's order, he would have really rushed into the Jade Archive Hall. Martial uncle helplessly, are you going to go into seclusion soon? Shui chatted with Zhuo Minghui for a while, then raised her head and asked. Yes, this old man is planning to do so. Helplessly nodded. However, this old man feels a little rushed. There are some things that I haven't prepared yet. By the way, is Martial Uncle Sun Ming free? This old man wants to go over and have a chat with her. This is difficult. Shui covered her mouth and smiled. She looked at Sun Shu and said, Master is also in seclusion. She seems to be breaking through the bottleneck of the middle gold core stage. I'm afraid she can't see Martial Uncle. So it's like this. Helplessly said, Martial Uncle, don't worry. Shui said with assurance. Martial Uncle will definitely be able to condense the core this time. This junior has a premonition. Oh, helplessly raised his eyebrows and said with some joy, Really? Of course. Shui nodded and said firmly, This junior has some insignificant premonition. It's similar to Xiaohua's matter. Good. Helplessly's heart suddenly felt at ease. He understood in his heart that there were countless strange people in the cultivation world. There were countless cultivators like Shui who had the bloodline of the true spirit and had strange magical abilities. Since she could judge that Xiaohua was fine one after another, then her premonition towards him shouldn't be a problem. This old woman also wants to go into seclusion in a few months. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Shui, do you think this old woman can condense the core? Shui was stunned and then said with a smile, Martial Uncle Zhuo, it's still early for you. No matter what, you should wait until the child is a little older. AI, this old woman has been tied up in the late stage of foundation establishment for many years. If I don't think about condensing the core now, I'm afraid I won't have another chance. Shui glanced at Zhuo Minghui's abdomen and bit her lips. She already faintly understood why Zhuo Minghui was pregnant. She thought for a moment and said with a smile, Martial Uncle Minghui, you worry too much. This junior thinks that Martial Uncle will definitely be able to condense the core in a few years. Really? When Zhuo Minghui heard this, her face was overjoyed like a blooming flower. Shui also showed a smile on her face. Chapter 2365. Oh, Shui, why are you here? Qian Lei was stunned. He did not expect to see Shui Sage. Do you want me to go to Sky Patrol City now? No. Shui Sage cupped his hands. It's very lively here. The juniors are having fun. How can it be my turn? This poor Taoist is here to discuss something with the Imperial Thunder Sect. All right, I'll let sect leader know. Qian Mo naturally would not let Shui Yuzhenren repeat himself. He hurriedly took half a step forward and explained what had happened. He smiled and said, "This is a joyous occasion for the Imperial Thunder Sect and the Sky Patrol City. I dare not make a decision. I hope that sect leader will step forward and not disappoint Shui Yuzhenren, who personally came to the meeting hall." Oh, Qian Lei smiled and said, "This is indeed a joyous occasion. True love can be seen on the battlefield. Only those who can withstand the test of blood and fire can be considered true dual cultivation. Come, let me see who is worthy of Shui Yu Sage's visit." Tu Hong hurriedly went forward and bowed. "Junior, Tu Hong greets Senior." "Oh, he is indeed a talent." Qian Lei nodded. "He is worthy of Imperial Thunder Sect's disciple." Then he looked up. "Qian Mo, which female disciple of Imperial Thunder Sect is Tu Hong marrying?" "Yes, Senior. It is Dui Chiming from Sky Patrol Palace." Tu Hong hurriedly said. Tu Hong, why are you so anxious? This old man hasn't promised you anything yet." Qian Lei laughed heartily, thinking that Tu Hong was anxious, so he turned to Qian Mo and said, "Go and bring Dui Chiming here. Let this old man take a look. Which beautiful female disciple is it that made the disciples of the Sky Patrol City so worried?" "Yes, disciple understands." Qian Mo bowed and sent out a message. Qian Lei and Shui Yu Sage chatted for a while as they waited for Dui Chiming. Qian Lei naturally asked about Tu Hong's reason. He was curious why Shui Yu Sage would come to the meeting hall to propose marriage for a golden core cultivator. As for Qian Mo, he knew that he couldn't let Shui Yuzhenren tell him the reason, so he respectfully told him about Quan Jin Shan. Even though Qian Lei was a nascent soul stage cultivator, he was still shocked when he heard that almost 50,000 sword cultivators and Daoist sect cultivators had died in Tu Hong's hands. He couldn't help but take a few more glances at Tu Hong. Previously, in a message that disciples sent to the sect, the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect, other than Dui Qiming, Ming Mao, and Dui Ling, the other 7 members died in the Battle of Mount Quanjin. Qian Mo continued, "This is also the total number of people that died in the Battle of Mount Quanjin." This disciple was just about to report to the sect master to reward Thunderclap Palace. "Oh, it's just that." Master Qian Lei was about to say, "Only 7 people?" But when he saw the cultivators behind Qian Mo, he changed his mind and said, "Yes, of course. These 7 people must be well rewarded. Their masters and relatives must be well compensated. Yes, this disciple understands." Qian Mo didn't tell Master Qian Lei the name list of the 7 people. Not long after, Dui Qiming arrived at the meeting hall. This was the first time she came to such an important place, and she was confused. Seeing Master Qian Lei in the image, Dui Qiming didn't dare to be negligent. She immediately bowed and greeted the sect master. "Not bad. You are indeed outstanding," Master Qian Lei said with a smile. He looked at Shui Yuzhenren and said, "The disciples of your Sky Patrol City have good taste." When Shui Yuzhenren saw Dui Qiming, there was a flash of understanding in his eyes. Even the corner of his eyes twitched slightly as he looked at Tu Hong thoughtfully. Hearing Master Qian Lei's question, Shui Yuzhenren smiled and said, "This is the opportunity of the younger generation. I was just helping out. Dui Qiming, this is Shui Yuzhenren, the city master of Sky Patrol City. Come forward and greet him." Qian Mo reminded her in a low voice. "Yes, I am Dui Qiming from Dui Lei Palace of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Greetings to the city master." Dui Qiming was even more confused. She didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly went forward to greet the city master. Get up. Shui Yuzhenren waved his sleeves and said with a smile, Dui Qimeng, do you have a dual cultivation partner? This. Dui Qimeng was slightly stunned, but she still said truthfully, I don't have one. Not bad. Master Qian Lazy laughed and said, It seems that the disciples of Sky Patrol City have done their homework well. You should have asked about Dui Qimeng's background. Well, since Dui Qimeng doesn't have a dual cultivation partner, I will make the decision. I agree to this marriage. Thank you so much, fellow Taoist Qian. Shui Yuzhenren cupped his hands and said, When fellow Taoist Qian comes to Sky Patrol City, I will invite you to a cup of wine. Well said, well said. Master Qian Lazy nodded and was about to end the video. But at this moment, Dui Qimeng came to her senses and shouted, Sect leader, I have something to say. Oh, what else do you have to say? Master Qian Lazy was a little displeased. It was just a dual cultivation between a Foundation establishment disciple. If the other party was not the City Lord of Sky Patrol City, he would not have asked. I don't know what's going on. Dui Qimeng's face turned red. I don't know which fellow Taoist I'm going to dual cultivate with. Master Qian Lazy pointed at Tu Hong and said, Of course, it's Tu Hong from Jinquan Mountain whom you met before. He is now the representative of Sky Patrol City in the conference hall. He performed well in the war. You have such a dual cultivation partner. It's not a disgrace to your family background. Don't worry. If you're bullied in Sky Patrol City in the future, you can go directly to the City Lord of Sky Patrol City. If he doesn't care, you can come to me. I will definitely make the decision for you. Sect Master. Dui Qimeng glanced at Tu Hong. When she came in, she saw the two nascent soul seniors, Master Qian Lazy and Master Shuiyu. She was so scared that she did not dare to be distracted. Now that she saw Tu Hong, she never thought that this gold core senior would covet her. She hurriedly shouted, Although I don't have a dual cultivation partner, but I already have a lover in my heart. It's just that because of the war between Tao cultivators, I didn't have time to hold the dual cultivation ceremony with him. Oh, Master Qian Lazy was stunned and unconsciously looked at Master Shuiyu. Master Shuiyu was even more surprised. He firmly believed that Tu Hong would not report to him without checking Dui Qimeng's background. If what Dui Qimeng said was true, this rash act would immediately become a big joke in the three kingdoms of cultivation. Tu Hong looked even more innocent than Master Shuiyu. He was even more surprised than Master Shuiyu. He felt that it was unbelievable. He looked at Dui Qimeng with a deathly gaze and said in a low voice, Qimeng, I have never been able to forget you since the first time I saw you. You're the most attractive female cultivator I've ever seen in my life. This too doesn't care who your lover is. This too wants to compete with him. I must snatch you from his hands. Senior 2, Dui Qimeng's face turned even redder. She said softly, I'm just an ordinary female cultivator. I don't deserve this kind of praise. As for my lover, it's Chui Hongshan, the captain of the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Senior, you've seen him on Mount Quanjin. When Tu Hong heard this, his face turned pale. His lower lip shrank, and he clenched his teeth. His eyes showed a trace of pain and disbelief. It's all my fault. Tu Hong sighed and lowered his head deeply. Senior 2? Dui Qimeng looked at Tu Hong in confusion. She then looked at Master Qian Lazy and Master Shuiyu. Cough, cough. Those two naturally wouldn't explain it to her. Only Qian Mo coughed twice and said, Dui Qimeng, there's actually something. I haven't announced it to the public yet. Once this matter is over, all the cultivators in Sky Patrol City will know about it. It's that the battle on Mount Quanjin has ended. Fellow Taoist 2's battle achievements are outstanding. He killed more than 40,000 sword cultivators. However, the 5,000 disciples of my sect who went to support him also sacrificed their lives. Chui Lang. Also among them? Dui Qimeng was shocked. She almost couldn't believe her ears. She then shouted, Xiao? Junior brother Xiao Hua also died? Xiao Hua. Qian Mo frowned. He didn't know who Xiao Hua was. Oh, Xiao Hua also died? Master Qian Lazy raised his eyebrows. His face was slightly shocked. He was a sect master. Although he knew Xiao Hua, he didn't pay attention to Xiao Hua's every move. He didn't even know that Xiao Hua participated in this battle. Xiao Hua. Heavenly Music Sect's Li Chengxiu's face flashed with a trace of refreshment. However, it was followed by a trace of shame and anger. He tilted his head slightly to look at Ardent Fire Mountain's Huaping. However, Huaping's face didn't have any reaction at all. It was as if she didn't recognize Xiao Hua. "Humph, you really know how to act." Li Chengxiu sneered. "Don't talk about a Foundation establishment disciple." Qian Mo shook his head. His face was filled with regret. In this battle, 20 Golden Core late-stage swordsmen were killed. The scene was really tragic and heroic. No matter if it's Cui Hongshan or Xiao Hua, they're the role models of my Imperial Thunder Sect's outstanding disciples. My Imperial Thunder Sect will definitely commend and reward them. And, Qianmo, give me the name list of these 5 people. I'll get people to prepare, to be able to sacrifice themselves for righteousness and kill tens of thousands of swordsmen. This kind of merit must not be ignored. Yes, this disciple will send it to Sect Master, Qian Mo said. He activated a secret technique and gave a name list of the 5 people to Master Qian Lazy. Oh, why are they all disciples of Shocking Thunder Palace? Master Qian Lazy was slightly stunned. This Cui Hongshan and Xiao Hua are also disciples of Helpless? This old man remembers. Master Qian Lazy didn't say anything. He turned his head and ordered the disciples beside him. Hearing that even Xiao Hua had fallen, Dui Qiming no longer had any doubts in her heart. Her face was deathly pale, but her mind kept flashing the sweet memories she had with Cui Hongshan. Chapter 2366. Dui Qiming. Naturally, Qianmo could not allow the 2 nascent Soul Stage seniors to speak. He reminded them, since Cui Hongshan has already died, it means that you have nothing to worry about now. The matter of Sky Patrol City, Daoist Qian. Tu Hong opened his mouth and said very elegantly, "It's all because I didn't investigate thoroughly. I didn't expect Dao friend Dui to have such matters. As for fellow Daoist Chui's tragedy, I'm also responsible for it. In I's opinion, let's put this matter aside for now. It wouldn't be too late to consider it after fellow Daoist Dui has recovered from his grief. Furthermore, this two's golden core was also damaged during the battle at Mount Quanjin. Right now, I need to recuperate and recover as well." Oh, so it's like this. Qian Mo's gaze swept past Dui Qimeng and then back to the 2 nascent soul seniors. "Sigh, it's all because of the Great War." Shui Yu Sage sighed. He looked at Qian Lazy and then at Tu Hong. "Tu Hong, when will your gold core be repaired?" "About 5 years should be enough," Tu Hong said after thinking for a while. "All right." Sage Shui Yu nodded and said to Qian Lazy, "Cultivator Qian, it's settled then. Since Dui Qiming no longer has any worries, let's wait for Tu Hong to repair his gold core. 5 years from now, let's hold the dual cultivation ceremony." I have no objections." Qian Lazy glanced at the pale Dui Qiming, who seemed to have lost her soul, and said, "Poor child, 5 years is enough for her to recover a lot." "Thank you, Brother Qian." Shui Yu Jinren did not want to stay in the meeting hall any longer. He stood up and cupped his hands. "You're welcome." Qian Lazy returned the salute and said, "This is a joyous occasion for Century City and Imperial Thunder Sect. This old man is also very happy." "Okay." Sage Shui Yu nodded and waved his sleeves. Light flashed around him, and he left the conference hall. "Farewell, Daoist Shui Yu." All the Golden Core cultivators bowed. Only Dui Qiming remained in a daze. "Qian Mo, take good care of Dui Qiming." Qian Lazy sighed. "Don't let her go to the battlefield for the next 5 years." "Yes, I understand." "Of course," Qian Mo agreed. Of course, he would not dare to send a female cultivator who was going to marry into the Sky Patrol City to the battlefield. Thank you for your hard work. Qian Lazy glanced at the others and said with a smile, We've all seen your contributions, you. When Qian Lazy was about to say something, his face suddenly showed a trace of astonishment, as if he was looking at something. After waiting for a while, he turned around and said with a smile, All of you can leave now. Qian, I have something to ask you. This junior will take his leave. Even though Qian Lazy was speaking to Qian Mo and the others might not be able to hear them, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, all the cultivators bowed respectfully. One by one, they formed hand seals and left the hall. Junior will also take her leave. DUI Qi Ming finally regained her senses and bowed respectfully. All right, DUI Qi Ming, you should go back and rest. Qian Lazy nodded. It's your fortune to be able to marry a golden core cultivator from Century City. However, this is all up to you. If you're unwilling, I won't let you stay in Sky Patrol City. Yes, I understand. DUI Qi Ming smiled bitterly. However, with two nascent soul cultivators personally speaking, she couldn't have any rebellious thoughts in her heart, especially after Cui Hongshun had fallen. As for Qian Lazy's words, she didn't hear any other meaning at all. After DUI Qi Ming left, Qian Mo then respectfully said, Regarding the incident at Jinshan Quan, only 7 of our Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples died. Among all the sects, we suffered the least losses. Therefore, this disciple did not personally report to the sect master. Yes, I'm not talking about this. Qian Lazy waved his hand and said, You all are at the front line and have to make your own decisions. You can't report everything to me. Yes. Qian Mo bowed, but his heart was puzzled. Have you confirmed that Xiao Hua and Cui Hongxin died? Qian Lazy asked inexplicably. This disciple just heard from Tu Hong. Qian Mo was stunned. This disciple hasn't confirmed it yet. However, this disciple has already seen the video. Although there were no Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples in it, the scene was indeed tragic. The cultivators in the middle stage of Foundation establishment were killed by the swordsmen, and the 20 to 30 illusory sword cultivators were also killed by the formation. Xiao Hua and Cui Hongxin shouldn't have survived. Yes, you tell me about the battle. Qian Lazy nodded. After Qian Mo told him about the formation, Qian Lazy nodded. This Tu Hong is indeed a cruel and merciless person, and also a rare talent. No wonder Shui Yu's spiritual master came personally to propose marriage. Yes, Qian Mo smiled apologetically. In addition, this disciple even thinks that Tu Hong may not be unaware of the relationship between DUI Qi Ming and Cui Hongxin. Yes, this kind of thing can't be verified by the dead. You don't need to say more. Qian Lazy naturally understood. DUI Qi Ming marrying into Sky Patrol City. Qian Mo thought Qian Lazy was going to say this, so he hesitated. If the sect master doesn't agree, why would this old man not agree? Qian Lazy sneered. Shui Yu's spiritual master went all out to encourage his subordinates. How can this old man not give him face? Besides, isn't it just a Foundation establishment disciple? My Imperial Thunder Sect even got a gold core son-in-law. Why would this old man not be happy? Sect master, what do you mean? Qian Mo was even more confused. Just now, this old man told the disciples to prepare the rewards for Cui Hongxin and the other disciples. Qian Lazy said patiently. However, the disciples checked the Jade Archive Hall of Jin Lei Palace, as usual. Only then did they find that Cui Hongxin, Xiao Hua, and the other 5 people's natal spirit tablets were all intact. This doesn't seem possible, right? Qian Mo was shocked. This disciple saw with his own eyes that thousands of Dao sect disciples were killed, and even eaten by the blood disaster beast. Yes, this old man has heard of the great formation that Tu Hong set up. Qian Lazy nodded. The spiritual howl of that great formation is very powerful, and even if this old man and the others went there, we wouldn't dare to break it. Moreover, that spiritual howl also isolated all divine sense, so no one could see what was going on inside. Or Maybe this is why the natal spirit tablets are not damaged. At this point, Qian Lei found it hard to explain. After all, the natal spirit tablet was different from divine sense. Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple will go and check on the disciples of the other sects. Qianmo nodded, but then he scratched his head. Should we inform Dui Qimeng about the rewards for these 7 disciples? This naturally has to be done. Qian Lei smiled. We can't disappoint the other disciples because of some suspicions. Moreover, if they can survive, their contributions will be great, and they deserve to be rewarded. As for Dui Qimeng, she doesn't need to know. From the moment Tu Hong saw her, her fate has already been decided. Yes, this disciple understands. Qian Mo nodded. Even if Cui Hongshan survives, facing a gold core cultivator like Tu Hong, he can't compare at all. Yes, Qian Lei nodded. Shui's spiritual master personally proposed marriage. How many people can there be in the Xiaoyu continent? Yes, this disciple understands. Qian Mo replied respectfully. Qian Lei waved his hand, and his figure slowly disappeared. Chapter 2367. Only Qian Mo was left standing in the meeting hall in a daze. Although today's matter was simple, it was really strange. It had nothing to do with the Imperial Thunder Sect, but in the end, it fell on the Imperial Thunder Sect's head. The strangest thing was that although the first team of the Imperial Thunder Sect had died, their life spirit tablets were not damaged. According to Tu Hong's decisiveness in the video, such a situation would never happen. Even if they didn't die, what does it have to do with me? After thinking for a moment, Qian Mo shrugged. After all, it was only a small team of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Even the first team only had 7 people, and they were disciples of the Thunder Palace. Compared to thousands of disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, it was nothing. Subsequently, Qian Mo secretly inquired about the other sections. Unexpectedly, all the disciples of the other sects who died in Jinquan Mountain had their life spirit tablets damaged without exception. When he reported this to Qian Lei only frowned slightly to indicate that he understood and did not say anything else. Qian Lei did not care about this matter, even if Qian Mo did not care about it. Therefore, the rewards of the 7 disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect were announced together with the rewards of the other Dao Sect cultivators in Sky Patrol City. Naturally, Tu Hong's name was at the top. After all, this was killing tens of thousands of sword cultivators. It was definitely a great merit. Although the Yinshi Prefecture and Sky Patrol City would announce the results of the battle every once in a while, and the Battle of the Spiritual Stone Vein had become the focus of everyone's attention. However, once the Battle of the Spiritual Stone Vein in Jinquan Mountain was announced, all the other battles were overshadowed. 5,000 Dao Sect cultivators, 30,000 disciples of Jinquan Mountain, 40,000 sword cultivators, nearly 30 illusory swordsmen. Just by looking at these numbers, not to mention the illusory swordsmen, it was enough to make all the cultivators speechless. Just as the Snow Region sage said, Tu Hong's generosity was too great. So great that even he was a little surprised. These results should only be achieved after the nascent soul cultivators and illusory swordsmen came out, but Tu Hong had done it 10 years earlier. Tu Hong's name instantly swept through the entire Sky Patrol City like a hurricane. It swept through the entire 3 cultivation countries, and even reached the ears of the sword cultivators of the Huan country. Above the Blue Lake, Lu Ruochang of the Black Phoenix Sword Sect had a look of shame and anger on his face. He coldly looked at a white-haired swordsman not far from him. The swordsman's face was somewhat similar to Ling Yunwu's. His lips were slightly pursed, and he did not say a word. The swordsman also narrowed his eyes and stared at LV Ruochang. Both of their gazes were like electricity, and sparks were about to fly. Ahem, ahem. A female swordsman not far from LV Ruochang was failing sword zhuang rualing. Looking at the two of them, she coughed a few times and said, "Friend LV Jianyu, friend Ling Jianyu, We are all swordsmen of the sword region. At this time, we should be united against the outside world. Why do we have to exhaust ourselves here? I don't want to either. The one called friend Ling Jianyu was Ling Moyu of the Soaring Windsword sect. He was Ling Yunwu's senior brother. He sneered and said, 10 swordsmen of the Soaring Windsword sect, and the swordsmen we invited were all buried in the spiritual stone mine of Mount Quanjin. I only said a few words, and friend LV Jianyu actually gave me such a look. Why should I be nice to her? Ling Yunwu messed up the mission I gave him. He went to Mount Quanjin to look for clues. He encountered a great battle and died. It's fate. How can you blame me? Your nose is not your nose, and your face is not your face. Why are you throwing a tantrum at me? Do you know? Ling Yunwu lost my black silk wood and sword pouch. How big of a delay did he cause? Because of this, the Beast Cultivator's senior Qing Feng will lose his life. Moreover, more swordsmen will lose their lives. What you said is only a possibility. Our Soaring Windsword sect has already paid for this with the lives of 10 illusory swordsmen. Ling Moyu said angrily. Swordsman, there's no need to argue. The short beast cultivator, Qing Feng, said with a bitter face. Swordsman Ling Yunwu died in Mount Quanjin. Presumably, the cultivator he was looking for also died. I'm afraid there's no hope for the sword pouch and black silkwood. I will go to Chestnut Valley to look for the spirit-swallowing bugs. However, LV Jianyu, I'm not black silkwood. Even if I risk my life, I won't be able to find it in a short time. You have to be prepared. The great array of Mount Quanjin is actually so terrifying. Even Senior Hua Jian can't break it at will. Maybe the sword pouch and black silkwood are inside. LV Ruochong said with a frown. Qin Jian of the Void Heaven Sword School said with a bitter smile. It's true. I personally want to check it. The spiritual roar inside is extremely powerful. At this time, even Senior Hua Jian will be injured. Even if the sword pouch and black silkwood are inside, I'm afraid they have already been destroyed. No wonder the conference hall of the Yanxi Mansion would send a message through a disciple. Within 10 years, everyone will hide the great array of Mount Quanjin. Wait until the spiritual roar of the great array stops, or wait for Senior Hua, Jian, and the nascent soul cultivators to make a move. LV Ruochong said thoughtfully, if they can handle it, why would they think of us? Yes, the cultivators of the Dao sect. I'm afraid they have some intention of delaying. Qin Jian also nodded. Anyway, we still have to pay close attention to Mount Quanjin. Alas, Senior Qing Feng, how much time do you need? LV Ruochong knew this and looked at Qing Feng again. Qing Feng was born with a bitter face. After thinking for a while, his wrinkled face was filled with helplessness. I can't be sure about this. At least a few months, at most a few years. Even, I won't get anything. Yes, I understand. LV Ruochong nodded and said to Qing Feng seriously, I'll have to trouble Senior Qing Feng with this matter. My sword domain will never forget Senior's contribution. In addition, I will also ask the sword friends of the 7 spiritual mountains to make a move. Good. Qing Feng nodded and said no more. Tu Hong. He is indeed vicious and merciless. LV Ruochong gritted her teeth. Why haven't I heard of this person before? My sword domain's warriors have mostly won in the fight for the spiritual stone mines. It was only at this Mount Quanjin that we suffered such a huge loss. Close to 40,000 swordsmen. I don't even know how to explain this to the sword heads. LV Jianyu, you don't have to worry about it. Qin Jian laughed. The Dao sect's cultivators also lost close to 40,000, similar to our sword domain's losses. It's just that it's because the sword friends of the Soaring Windsword sect went to help. That's why the losses were greater. Alas, that's right. LV Ruochong had to admit that if not for the matter with Ling Yunwu, she definitely wouldn't be so angry. Following which, LV Ruochong clasped her hands and said, Brother Ling, I'm really a little anxious. Please forgive me. Ling Moyu saw that LV Ruochong actually took the initiative to apologize and hurriedly returned the greeting. My soaring wind sword sect has suffered heavy losses this time. I'm also angry I was too rash. Haha, isn't that all right? Ruo Ling laughed. Our sword domain swordsmen have always been honest with each other, 100 times better than the Dao sect's cultivators who scheme against each other. That's right, Qin Jian sneered. Tu Hong is just a golden core cultivator. I'll find an opportunity to kill him. That way, I'll be able to resolve my hatred as a swordsman. Brother Qin, you're right. Ling Maoyu shook his head and said, It's a pity that this fellow has already entered the Yanxi Mansion's conference hall and won't easily leave the Sky Patrol City. I'm afraid it won't be easy to kill this fellow. And I know. I've fought with the Dao Sect's cultivators for so long. I've learned some things. I'll think of a way. Qin Jian nodded. The Battle of the Spiritual Stone Mines was just a test. However, we also know that cultivators are treacherous and cunning. In the future, we still have to be more detailed in our plans. Don't let the cultivators beat us at our own game again. Lu Ruochang pondered for a moment and discussed the next step with many swordsmen. The Huan Kingdom's swordsmen hated the battle at Mount Quanjin to the bone, and the battle at Mount Quanjin had attracted the attention of many swordsmen and cultivators. One must know that there were tens of thousands of cultivators and swordsmen's remains. There must be a lot of magical treasures left behind. If anyone could obtain some magical treasures from Mount Quanjin, it would be worth a lot of spiritual stones in e.g. Who wouldn't be jealous? But the strange thing was that the Yanxi Mansion's conference hall and the Huan Kingdom sword cultivators had issued a ban. All cultivators and sword cultivators were prohibited from entering the 100-mile radius around Mount Quanjin. Once they were discovered, they would be killed immediately. Such a ban naturally couldn't stop the greedy cultivators. Even some sword cultivators secretly went there. The city guards and sword cultivators of the Sky Patrol City had a tacit understanding, each of them patrolling different areas at different times. After killing many cultivators and sword cultivators, the number of people who went to Mount Quanjin had decreased. As for whether there were any high-level cultivators who secretly went there, that wasn't something that the patrolling disciples would know. But one thing was certain, that Mount Xuanjin's Great Array had no movement at all. If Mount Xuanjin's Great Array didn't have any movement, then no one would disturb Xiao Hua's forced cultivation. However, Imperial Thunder Sect's 10,000 Thunder Valley had caused a great disturbance. Today was Xiang Zhili's resting day. He was following Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian as they flew towards the sky of 10,000 Thunder Valley. Xiang Zhili was flying around his father and mother restlessly, and at the same time, he was asking some questions in a low voice. These questions were naturally not about his cultivation in Zhenlei Palace, but the simplified cultivation method of the Dragon Transformation Art. The Dragon Transformation Art was indeed broad and profound. Even someone as strong as Shui had to spend a long time comprehending it under Xiao Hua's guidance. How could Xiang Zhili be able to do it in one go? Usually, the little fellow was very cautious and never revealed anything. Only after he finished a day's worth of cultivation did he go into the quiet room to comprehend and cultivate the Dragon Transformation Art alone. The questions that he had accumulated over the past month could only be found at this time to ask his parents. Furthermore, Xiang Zhili followed Xiao Hua's instructions and didn't read out the complete cultivation method to Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian. He only told them the parts that he didn't understand and his own comprehension and doubts, allowing Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian to explain. This kind of happy situation was what Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian liked the most. Not only could they watch their beloved son grow up, but they could also enjoy the happiness of family. It was really rare. However, as Xiang Zhili's cultivation of the Dragon Transformation Art deepened, Xiang Yang and Yin Qinglian started to be surprised. Because Xiang Zhili's questions were becoming more and more profound, not only did they far exceed the knowledge of Qi refinement cultivators, but even more so, they far exceeded the cultivation of Dao sect cultivators. Furthermore, from Xiang Zhili's questions, Xiang Yang and Yin Xinglian could faintly deduce the power of the dragon transformation art after successfully cultivating it. It was definitely several times stronger than the same level of cultivation. Chapter 2368. Xiang Yang, who had always been cautious, was somewhat anxious. Occasionally, he would express some thoughts in front of Yin Xinglian, wanting Xiang Zhili to stop a little and wait until Xiao Hua returned. After all, having someone to guide him was completely different from not having anyone to guide him. But Yin Xinglian was extremely confident in Xiao Hua, knowing that he would absolutely not do anything he wasn't confident in, especially when it came to her beloved son. Therefore, she always disagreed with Xiang Yang's caution. Just like today, after Xiang Zhili stopped Xiang Yang and Yin Xinglian, his little mouth pouted, somewhat dissatisfied, but his eyes were filled with excitement. He activated the flying talisman and flew several zhang forward, looking left and right at the familiar scenery, even whistling the tune he had just learned. Xiang Yang transmitted his voice to Yin Xinglian. Wife, I think it's better to let Lier stop a little. The thing he cultivates, even we, middle-stage foundation establishment cultivators, can't answer. If he continues to cultivate, won't there be a problem? Middle-stage foundation establishment. Yin Xinglian raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, seemed to be more than middle-stage foundation establishment, right? Wife also noticed? Xiang Yang had a smile on his face. I've also caught up with you. If I cultivate bitterly for another 5 to 10 years, I'll definitely be able to accompany you into late-stage foundation establishment. Yes, from early-stage foundation establishment to late-stage foundation establishment. Whose credit is it? Yin Xinglian was still all smiles as she said. Xiang Yang sighed and said, alas, I know it's junior brother Zhao's credit, but you can't always mention junior brother Xiao every time you mention Li. Admittedly, he's Li Er's adoptive father. Admittedly very powerful, but after all, he was in the middle of a great battle and wasn't in Myriad Thunder Valley. Didn't you hear junior brother talk about it? Yin Xinglian said, some things that Li Er doesn't understand, of course we can answer, but if we let him comprehend it himself, it'll be even better for his cultivation. The problem is... Xiang Yang stamped his feet. This cultivation method is overbearing and strange. Is junior brother strange? Is junior brother overbearing? Yin Xinglian said with conviction. But the clumsy Xiang Yang was a little anxious. At this moment, several disciples of the Heavenly Thunder Palace flew over from the opposite side. The one in front was actually a late Golden Core Stage disciple. Xiang Yang, Yin Xinglian, and Xiang Zhili did not dare to be negligent. They hurriedly shut their mouths and stood in midair to respectfully salute. The Golden Core cultivator looked at the three of them, smiled, and raised his hand to indicate that he was leaving. What's the matter? Xiang Yang was puzzled. Who knows? Let's go back and ask Master. Yin Xinglian replied with a strange expression on her face. All right. Xiang Yang scratched his head as if he didn't want to see her. In less than an hour, the cave abode was in sight. Xiang Zhili activated his flying talisman and rushed to the front. Xiang Yang opened his mouth, wanting to stop Xiang Zhili, but he didn't know what to say. Yin Xinglian smiled wryly as she looked at Xiang Yang. Both of them flew towards the Immortal's Cave. Xiang Zhili was the first to enter the Immortal's Cave. He was still respectful as he walked quickly to Immortal's Cave and bowed, saying that he had seen Grandmaster. However, Immortal did not seem to be happy like before. Instead, he forced a smile on his face and asked him to stand up. Xiang Zhili felt that something was wrong. However, when he turned to salute Zhuo Minghui again, he was even more surprised. Zhuo Minghui's abdomen was slightly bulging, her face was slightly red, and there were tears in her eyes. Greetings, Grandmaster. Xiang Zhili's heart trembled. After saluting respectfully, his gaze fell on Zhuo Minghui's abdomen. There was curiosity in his clear gaze. Thus, Zhuo Minghui was even more embarrassed. Immortal's face was also slightly unnatural, but it was sometimes covered by a touch of sorrow. Then, Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian entered the Immortal's cave. Obviously, they immediately felt the oppressive atmosphere in the Immortal's cave. Instantly, an extremely bad feeling rose from the bottom of their hearts. That's right. Since the start of the war, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples had also suffered casualties. Grievous news and obituaries were constantly sent back to the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian naturally heard about it. How could they not know when they saw their master and mistress so sad? Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian did not have time to salute and hurriedly said, "Master, is it the two junior brothers?" Then, the two of them did not dare to say more. They only looked at Immortal, afraid that they would get a definite answer from him. Immortal sighed helplessly and nodded slightly. "Is it junior brother Xiao or junior brother Cui?" Xiangyang's heart was immediately filled with sorrow, and a sense of powerlessness welled up. The two of them. He could only say two words helplessly. Seeing two of his disciples die just like that, his heart was indeed like being stabbed by a knife. Impossible. Xiang Zhili's loud voice immediately rang out. Foster father is so powerful. How could he die? This is absolutely impossible. But then his small hand covered his mouth, and his eyes darted around, as if he knew that he had revealed something. Alas! Immortal sighed helplessly and threw a jade archive in his hand to Xiangyang, saying with a wry smile, "Not to mention Lier, who doesn't believe it. Even your master and mistress don't believe it." The two children did not look like they died young. Especially Hong Shun, no matter how you look at it. He looks like he will become someone great in the future. But the person who sent the message was a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace, and the message was also the Heavenly Thunder Palace Master's commendation order. It said that Xiao Hua and Hong Shun sacrificed themselves for righteousness and fought with sword cultivators at the Spring Gold Mountain Spirit Stone Mine in Century City, killing tens of thousands of sword cultivators, including more than 30 golden core sword cultivators. Sacrificed themselves for righteousness? Xiangyang was slightly stunned. In his mind, this term did not seem to be associated with Xiaohua. Alas, 30 golden core swordsmen, ah. He sighed helplessly. Even if this old man went there, it would be impossible for him to survive, let alone Hong Shun and Xiaohua. Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian were certainly very confident in Xiaohua, but when they heard that there were 30 golden core swordsmen, the two were also stunned. Yes, no matter how powerful Xiaohua was, he could not be compared with golden core swordsmen, let alone 30 golden core swordsmen. When Xiangyang and Yin Qinglian saw the Jade Archive, their faces were even more ashen, and their faces were as ugly as Zhuo Minghui's. Alas, they're all dead. What's the use of this commendation order? Xiangyang sighed and turned to walk to his chair. His footsteps were somewhat staggered, as if he had aged a few years in an instant. It's still the Heavenly Thunder Palace Master's commendation order. He said helplessly and self-deprecatingly, "I've lived for so long, but I've never seen such a standard commendation order. Today, thanks to my two disciples, my horizons have been broadened. Master, no matter what, the two junior brothers have one glory for our 10,000 Thunder Valley." Yin Qinglian thought for a moment and said while suppressing her grief, "Didn't the commendation order say it? Junior brother Cui is in charge of the first team of our Heavenly Thunder Sect and has outstanding military achievements. If you like this work, you're welcome to come to Chidian. Come to vote for recommendation and monthly votes." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.